Okay, good morning, everyone, and welcome to and thank you for joining the IAB Europe's first Virtual Programmatic Day of 2022. My name is Nick Welsh, and I head up Programmatic and Publisher Development at Integral Ad Science, but I'm also the chair of the IAB Europe Programmatic Trading Committee, which is a multi-stakeholder group that aims to increase understanding of the programmatic ecosystem, the impact it has on digital advertising, and hopefully to influence the industry via initiatives. As most of you all know, IAB Europe is the European level association of the digital marketing and advertising ecosystem, and through its membership of national IABs and media, technology and marketing companies, its mission is to lead political representation and promote industry collaboration across Europe. And one of the ways in which we do this is by bringing people together through events such as this initiative, the IAB's Virtual Programmatic Day. And I just want to thank every single one of you for joining. I also want to highlight that IAB Europe and I are very grateful to have our sponsors for this event, Quantcast and Yieldlove, who obviously their sponsorship helped make this event possible. And we can say confidently that the Virtual Programmatic Day is one of the largest virtual events in not just the programmatic industry, but the digital advertising industry as a whole. And unlike many other virtual events, this isn't pre-recorded. So we are live. Please excuse any errors or mistakes. But thank you for joining and taking time out of your busy schedule. So we'll make sure that we reward you, hopefully, with some really informative and fantastic sessions. Today, we've got a stellar lineup of speakers, moderators and panelists across 6 sessions that will discuss everything from the programmatic landscape in Europe, identity and privacy, CTV developments, to diversity and inclusion, and exciting things to look forward to in the future. All of the speakers you'll be hearing from today are members of IAB Europe. So we're very fortunate to have the very best leaders in our industry take part in our events and join our initiatives. And of course, if you want more information on how to get involved in future events or on IAB membership, please contact either Lauren, Marie Claire. Okay, so before we kick off, we'd love to know who is joining us from across Europe and beyond today. So please let us know in the chat what stakeholder group you belong to, and also by taking part in our poll. And as if by magic, it should appear on your screen now. Fantastic. Okay, so whilst you complete the poll, I just want to highlight that we want to encourage audience participation throughout the event, and each panel will be followed by an audience Q&A. So if you have questions for today's panelists, you'll be pleased to know that you can submit them in the Q&A box at the bottom of the Zoom window during the panel. Okay. And thank you for completing the poll. The results are in. Awesome, welcome to everyone. And now on to our first session, a keynote presentation from Tom Suttle, who is the Senior Digital Advertising Analyst at IAB Europe on the programmatic ecosystem, new partnerships and the future. Over to you, Tom.
Good morning, thanks, Nick. Just share my screen. Right, morning. Yeah, hello everyone. I'm really excited to be here today talking to you about the key trends affecting the programmatic ecosystem for now and in the future. As you can see, new partnerships being forged and changes in the way that programmatic is being bought. Yeah, so my name is Tom Suttle. I'm Senior Digital Advertising Analyst here at the IAB Europe, so I'm focused largely on ad spend, but also how the money flows and what are the key trends that we see in the digital ad ecosystem. So just to start off with a macro look at the digital advertising industry, you can see these are the growth forecasts for 2022 by ad format. And you can see we're actually forecasting strong growth across all formats, led by retail media, which you can see with really huge growth expectations of over 50% year on year this year. CTV continues to be, of course, a hot topic and one of the topics today, growing very strongly, and audio. And you can see programmatic a little bit further down, growth expectations of 19.4% in 2022, following a really strong year in 2021. And it continues to be growing fastly. And just to highlight that further, you can see this is the European top line macro view of the programmatic ad spend. So you can see it's actually doubled from 2017 to 2021. So even outside of these other formats and platforms, programmatic ad spend, this is excluding any social spend, continues to be in really strong shape. And we're actually you can see 2021 is still a forecast. We're in the process here of compiling the 2021 numbers, which will be presented at Interact, which is happening later this month. We'll be presenting the latest ADEX study. So I hope to see some of you there. Of course, have to quickly mention inflation. Inflation continues to rise, which will be impacting, of course, on the cost of living. But the ad market, the digital ad market, continues to be quite buoyant. We saw, during the pandemic that the digital advertising spend was decoupled from GDP growth, whereas historically GDP and digital ad spend were in line with each other. We've seen digital ad spend obviously continue to grow at a fast rate, despite the headwinds happening at that macroeconomic level. So diving a bit deeper into programmatic in general, you can see that the cookieless world will be built on many pillars, right? So you can see here from contextual-based solutions down to the individual-based solutions. And you can see here, obviously in the middle, such like publisher solutions. And we believe that all of these solutions have a role to play in the future of the digital advertising. And the M&A market is also a place where we can look at to make big bets on how identity will develop in the future. You can see that this is a summary of M&A activity in 2021 in the identity space. 2021 was a bumper year in ad tech mergers and acquisitions, the biggest on record. And a lot of those acquisitions were happening in identity and privacy, and many of those being first-party data and contextual-based solutions. So they give us a good indication of how the market is developing. And what we see with first-party data is there's the ability is unevenly distributed among advertisers, right? So these emojis show you, how basically how best placed an advertiser is in terms of their first-party data is how close they are to the transaction, right? So retail, as an example, has a lot of transactional data, very close to the consumer, therefore they are in a strong position in terms of first-party data. Whereas CPGs, who are of course often selling a lot of their goods via retail, lack that dependable playbook. And I guess, we really encourage advertisers to continue to design experiences where consumers actively consent to sharing data with that clear value exchange. It obviously leaves advertisers best prepared for the future. And interestingly, we're seeing buyers moving to fewer direct programmatic relationships. So this shows you the average number of DSPs used by buyers has been reducing over time, which of course is a sign of maturity in the market, with certain clear winners in the DSP world winning out with more dependable tech and efficient buying routes. And interestingly, DSP SSP relationships are often commoditized. So this shows you how many SSPs the DSP is buying through. You can see the biggest percentage on the left-hand side, 64%, is 7 or more DSPs. So this means that there are very few unique sources of inventory being bought by programmatic. And we can also see in some of the most recent acquisitions, which I touched upon, but also launches and partnerships, are showing a significant shift in the way value is being seen in the industry. So we saw Magnite buying Carbon, Triple Lift, of course, buying 1+X. The growing rise of marketplaces, of course, GroupM Marketplace being the biggest example of that, providing scaled access to premium inventory. And of course, one of the big developments has been the Trade Desk launching OpenPath, providing advertisers with direct access to premium publisher direct inventory. And we're seeing programmatic ad spend move to more closed paths, right? This is what these things are leading to. An example here shows you, and of course the data is anonymized, but this shows you where a market participant has an SSP and a DSP, what percentage of the buying goes through the DSP's buying goes through their own SSP, right? And we can see, while it does really vary from the 5 players you can see here, the algorithms tend to favor their own SSP, right? So, which means that the spend is moving to fewer and fewer paths. And you can see that visualized here. So amidst all the privacy, innovation and pressure and business model changes, the share of programmatic ad spend going via the open ecosystem here at the IB Europe, we're projecting to reduce in the next few years. Of course, the Trade Desk being a big part of that, but also the aforementioned reduction in paths that we're seeing. And this quite big chart is alluvial chart. It shows you, this is an example of one car brand buying on one single publisher. You can see historically buying through many different paths, just one brand and one publisher. Obviously, you won't be able to see the detail here, but this is the buy seats, DSPs, and SSPs being bought. So we're seeing similar ads being bought in many, many different ways before, right, to reach the same destination. But we are starting to see that to change. We're also seeing a fragmentation of silos. This decentralization, media adoption, of course, these silos existing within programmatic, which of course provide challenges. And you can see that further here, right? This is the walled gardens and walled hedges. You can see new ones emerging in CTV, retail media, which of course will provide challenges. Historically, we've seen lots of acquisitions in technology space, tech being brought into the walled gardens, and I suspect we'll start to see that happen again in the future. But it's not all bad. There are, of course, within that, there are opportunities, right? Opportunities for efficiency, opportunities for new partnerships and ways of working. And retail media is one such example of that. It's already briefly mentioned that, but of course, this is brands utilizing retailers' first-party data to buy programmatically. Not, of course, retail media represents both on-site happening in retailers, but also off-site buying, utilizing that data. And you can see the market is growing at incredibly fast pace. And we saw in 21 a real raft of launches or relaunches of the retail media offerings of retailers. So you can see examples here from the UK of Tesco, Sainsbury's launching retail media offerings, France, so the likes of Casino Group, Carrefour relaunching their Carrefour links in 2021. And that's led to an emerging ecosystem of ad tech in retail media, which we're seeing. We saw Criteo, of course, increasingly focused on retail media as a shift in their business model. Citrus Ads was purchased by Publicis last year as they continue to focus on opportunities in the commerce space. And this offsite retail media generates a new programmatic opportunity. So you can see this is the share of retail media spend happening on a retailer's website versus off. And as you can see, we're projecting that to the offsite to increase over the next few years. So thank you. That was a real brief overview of some of the key changes happening in programmatic at the moment. I hope you enjoyed it. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Thank you.
Cheers, Tom. Thank you for sharing those insights. I mean, it's great to see how programmatic industry is thriving, and seeing the kind of the emergence of retail media is super exciting. I'm delighted to say that IAB Europe has brought together now a panel of industry leaders and experts from our kind of programmatic trading committee to explore new approaches and innovations when it comes to privacy and identity. And our moderator for this is Naima Compton, who's the Chief Operating Officer at SurData. And don't forget, please submit your questions using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, and we'll review those questions and hopefully we'll put a selection of them to the panel at the end of the session. Over to you, Naima. We might be having some technical difficulties, so if we
here I am. Thank you so much, Nick. Hello everybody, and welcome to the first panel of the day. Let me introduce myself. I'm Naïma Conton, Chief Operating Officer at Sadeza. At this point, I'm really glad to moderate this panel because we are dealing with targeting, whether it is contextual, semantic, or user-centric right now. And it's been years that we are exploring and developing our knowledge and our experience in privacy to go on with running our activities. So I'm really glad to welcome our speakers today, experts in our market, to talk about one of the solutions, the identity, and how these solutions can integrate the privacy in it. So if you would like, can we please start with the introduction? Ladies first. Marina, would you?
Yes, happy to. And thank you all so much for having me. My name is Moana Beals. I'm the VP of Global Strategic Partnerships at ID5. I've been with ID5 since nearly the beginning, so over 4 years now, and I've seen a lot happen in that 4 years. So current remit is to look after our key partners who primarily sit on the distribution side.
Thank you, Marina. Christo.
Yes, hi everyone. I'm Christo. I'm heading up data within Schibsted Marketing Services, which is the advertising sales arm of Schibsted, the media house in the Nordics, handling data, targeting insights, and privacy and advertising scope for Schibsted.
Thank you, Christo. And Paul.
Hi, yeah, I'm a senior product manager at Xandr. I work on privacy, so I own privacy actually, and also identity initiatives within Xandr, predominantly modeled approaches that we're working on that we might get into a little bit in this discussion. I used to work as a solutions consultant. I've been at Xandr side about 5 years now, and I've been heavily involved with the publisher side as a solutions consultant before my transition to product management. So very aware of where Krista and Marina are coming from today.
It will be very interesting, I think. Thank you all. We'll start with the million-dollar question for all of you guys. Do you think the industry is on track to operate in a post-cookie world? Again, Marina, would you like to start?
Yeah, happy to. Yeah, definitely the million-dollar question, right? I think on the tech side, on the platform side, we saw some, really early adopters and lots of partners who were not kind of deterred by the shift in end date that was given by Google, which is really great. We've seen huge publisher adoption and increasing interest actually from advertisers direct, which is interesting. I think from our perspective, we've absolutely advise partners to use this window as a chance to test and to learn and to feed those learnings into a broader identification strategy. And we've got some really great results from that. So, the message is clear. We're working on education. The time to act is now. And I think especially considering there's already a huge opportunity being missed today on Safari and Firefox. I think we talk a lot about the future, but like right now, there's already an opportunity. So we should be focusing on that. So definitely still more work to be done, but I'd say we're definitely getting there.
Great, thank you. Paul?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point that Moana made just at the end there, because we do seem to get very focused on what's happening in Chrome a lot of the time, because when we're talking about cookies, we forget that we actually are talking about Chrome. I think it depends which part of the industry that you're talking about from my perspective. So I think, the Xandr pitch, I think Xandr is well positioned for the future, and we've made investments in first-party identifiers and universal IDs, and also modeled approaches, which we'll probably get into a bit more throughout the course of this panel. I think that, as Moana and also Krista will know, I think publishers are well prepared for the shift, or they're increasingly well prepared as they've leaned into those things, especially with first-party identifiers and universal IDs like ID5. And I think advertisers are getting there in some ways, but it's more complicated what they have to do, because it depends on the approach. It depends on the use case, what identity approach they need to take. So it is more complicated. I think What's interesting is that I don't know, we're talking about third-party cookies and the deprecation thereof. I think what's interesting is the browser, if we're talking about that part of the industry, doesn't seem to be as ready as they possibly could be in this time. So I spend a lot of my time doing research on the privacy sandbox from a product management perspective and how Xandr can lean into the privacy sandbox. And there have been significant challenges in that area, and have to remember that deprecation of third-party cookies is actually an aspect of the privacy sandbox and a cause of the rest of it. So and there's still a lot of work to be done in that area before that privacy sandbox can be ready to embrace the future. I would say we can get into that a bit more in this panel too.
Great. You'll maybe have time to explain a bit more about it just after that.
Yeah, I'll elaborate.
Krista, what is your point of view?
So I don't think we're, remotely close to an operating model that will exist after the post third-party world. I think we're in for a really bumpy ride, to be honest. But I mean, on the positive side, there's a lot of work being done on the technical side, and Paul mentioned some of them. We have publisher provided IDs. I guess we'll talk about advertiser provided IDs at some point, and we have vendors supporting multiple IDs. We're doing much more hashing, encryption, and parties having to have a key to unlock an identity. There's a lot of innovation, or maybe you can call it catching up, done on the technical side. That's very positive. I still think we have a lot of thinking to do around the core issue of I believe that some form of authenticated identities are in the future, and to make that work, you need to manage the relationship to the user. And the user has, they have two questions, right? Who do I deal with? Who's my counterpart? Who can I complain to when I'm not happy? And the second, what's in it for me, and how can I trust what you're saying? And those questions, some publisher do that within their limited ecoscope in a decent way. I think we've been quite successful, as have others, but doing that at a slightly larger scale or cross market or cross media type, there's still a lot of work to be done there.
All right, thank you, Krista. Well, I know, and you've been talking about it just before, but Xandr has been really involved in the last years, working on the different solutions to answer to this change of the market. So I would like to have your point of view about how do you see identity in the digital advertising landscape evolving beyond the deprecation of the third-party cookie?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because you frame this question around the digital landscape, but then also focused on the cookie, and the digital landscape is a lot bigger than just the browser, right? And I think almost like removing the third-party cookie maybe allows us to be a little bit less myopic in our approach to reaching our audiences. I think, as Krista touched upon, I think there'll be an increased, I don't think reliance is the right word, an increased focus on direct relationships with consumers. So logged in, because those logged in relationships naturally lead to a place where you can start to build holistic approaches across device, for example, where you have a relationship across device. And I think we'll start to see those approaches being more and more in focus, where the reach might be smaller, but what you know about those users might be greater. And so that more enriched in that sense. And I think that means that naturally leads to an increased focus. I don't want to be careful with my terminology here, but increased focus on what have been traditionally termed as walled gardens. I really don't like that term, but sort of vertical providers, let's say, that have cross-device awareness of their users. And I think those relationships will be increasingly important. And also modeled approaches, because I think as we stop having or being able to reach audiences or particular people again across device or in different environments, we'll start to be more reliant upon building understanding of users generally, and then being able to increase our modeled approaches and our reliance upon those techniques. I do want to make one point about what I said about the vertical companies that have relationships with those consumers. Although they do have those relationships, there are interesting methodologies out there that have been proposed to leverage those relationships to the benefit of the whole ecosystem. So, for example, within the W3C or Privacy Sandbox, very insular conversations with lots of geeky people, we're discussing things like the interoperable private attribution proposal, which has been proposed by Meta and Mozilla, which is I don't want to go into this in too much technical depth, but it essentially helps to leverage the direct relationships people like Facebook and Google have with their consumers to enable attribution, which is one of the key ad tech use cases, across devices for everyone and not just for those big players. So although there will be more focus in those relationships, it's not necessarily the case that it will be just those players that benefit from those relationships. I did want to make that point.
Thank you, Paul. Marina, would you have a point also?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to, I guess, pick up on a couple of points that have been mentioned around deterministic authenticated user base. Like, clearly there's a huge value against those users, but I think when we look to the future and we look to an alternative of the third-party cookie, which has enabled kind of programmatic to scale so tremendously over the last few years, we need to have scale. And I think there's a kind of a philosophical and a practical point to be made here. I think on one side, from a publisher perspective, not every publisher is going to have logged in users, but those publishers have a right to develop a monetization strategy. I think from the buy side, not every buyer is going to want to target users they have IDs for, email addresses for, because, how do you prospect, for example? So I really think to gain parity, we need scale. And I think, this is an opportunity to build that framework to enable that scale. So we really believe in both the combination of deterministic and probabilistic methods for cross-domain reconciliation. I think looking at beyond like the third-party cookie and evolving, I think obviously, on the web, most browsers will remove or will soon remove third-party cookies, but in mobile app, IDFAs are already restricted. There's lots of questions on Google ad IDs and IP address for CTV. So I think there's probably there is a huge opportunity for cross-channel in terms of growth.
Thank you, Marina. Now, let's go on with you, Paul, if you are still okay. You've been talking a bit about the sandbox and everything. So now I would like to have your view also, because you seem to be involved in a lot of analysis and you've been involved in looking at all the new solutions and the sandbox particularly. But at some point, do you think, if there are, which identity do you think have been built to stand the test of time, meaning introducing privacy inside the identity solution? Do you think there are? And if yes, which are they?
Wow, that's an absolutely enormous question. Yeah, so I'll take a step back here. So Xander's been heavily, and myself personally, heavily involved in the TCF framework. So I can't really mention privacy without mentioning TCF. And I have to kind of give a shout out to the cookie in some regards, because from a pure privacy and compatibility with the TCF framework, the cookie wasn't such a bad solution, right? And identifiers themselves are not a bad solution. So if you're looking at, if you're GDPR focused or e-privacy focused, like we are in the EU, then it's almost made things more difficult that the dependence on identifiers is going away, right? Because there's a very, what users ultimately want is, that privacy by design is one thing, but the average person walking on the street doesn't really understand most of the things that are going on in the privacy sandbox. In fact, most of the people in ad tech don't really understand what's going on in the privacy sandbox. So it's very convoluted and very technical. If you speak to the person on the street, what they really care about is transparency, understanding why these creepy ads are following them, their words, not mine, and being able to control like how those ads follow them. And from a technical perspective, identifiers are a really good way of being able to establish that quite easily. If you can identify a user, then you can quite easily grant them transparency through the supply chain, and also grant them control of how they're reached in the future. I think the Privacy Sandbox takes a wholly different approach, and we have to say that it's very nascent, and it's it's good that it's an open source project and that lots of people are working on it, but they're working on sort of privacy by design principles. So things like device identifiers or any sort of personal data never leaving the device in the first place, which is why, take a single example, the Topics API, which is the Privacy Sandbox answer to behavioral targeting. Whether it answers that is a different question, but it is the API for that purpose. Maintains all of the browsing information of the user on the device, and then creates a category based on that browsing information, and then provides that to the ad tech ecosystem. Now, you could argue that that's a privacy by design approach, which I think it is, but I think there are some definite questions to be answered in terms of where the transparency and control for the user actually comes in, and how transparent those things are made to the user. There is conversation in that area. I'm not saying there's not, but it still remains unclear exactly how that will be surfaced to the user, and how that will be substantially better from just deleting your cookies, being able to delete your cookies in the first place. And also some very good and hard questions around e-privacy, GDPR, and those are just two pieces of legislation when we're talking about the worldwide the world, which is exploding with legislation, privacy legislation right now with regards to IDs and things like that. So I'm not sure if that was a good answer to the question. I have a natural inclination towards, from a privacy perspective, identifiers plus modeled approaches that don't require any personal data at all. And I think to summarize, the Privacy Sandbox, privacy by design is great, but we need to get that transparency and control in there so that it's clear to the users.
Thank you, Paul. It wasn't a nice question, to be honest, a very large one. Krista, I know you have a point of view kind of a bit different, and you are very keen on discussing about authentication and how the user will feel about all of this. So do you have any view?
In terms of which identity solution that will
Is there one, or if you think there is one?
No, I don't think there's any one, right? I think there's I mean the verticalization that Paul mentioned is also how we see it, that the industry needs to handle multiple identity spaces, and when you use the term walled garden, it seems so like bad, so to say, but you can also see it as something else, right? I maybe not the walled gardens of today do it like this, but the way I see the future is kind of a walled garden that has gates and windows. So the gates, so data can go in and out, but in a controlled manner, and that it can be observed, and with windows, so you can see what happens on the inside, but not necessarily identifying anything there. But I think there's different buckets of data where the user relates to it, and then when the data goes from one garden to another, it's something the user kind of follows. I think in Europe, it's with the GDPR and all the other legislation, I just don't see any like non-authentication solutions scale, because it's so hard to comply with all those kind of different regulations. So we're kind of all in on that approach. But what I would like to see though, and what I think can be achieved, because when we talk about all these different purposes of processing it, we kind of mingle them together, right? But from our perspective, like collecting and data and using that for targeting, it's really hard to see how that can be done without a clear value exchange with clear counterparts to the user. But if you go down the chain, and you mentioned, Paul, attribution, and you can go even further on this, things like frequency capping, right? No one wants to see the same ad all over the internet. And when we do user research and how people feel about ads, they usually don't feel a lot, but they do notice them. And the number one thing they complain about is, I don't want to see the same ad over and over again. And I'm sure, and this is, I mean, I think maybe it would make sense for the industry and for the browsers, especially, maybe to focus on very narrow use cases and that can be understood by the user and that is useful. And attribution is obviously one thing, but even like frequency capping is something that I believe can be done fairly privacy safe. So as Paul, I think I drifted off, and this is so complicated, and there are so many lanes of thought here, but at least it's on topic.
Yeah, it is. You're a bit answering to our next question, but it's yet a point, and it's very interesting. Anyway, we know that the market is evolving, and we don't know still how it will be tomorrow. So we are just building it. So all your views and opinions are very important, I think, to build it correctly. Maybe we can focus now on something. I don't know if it is existing, but I guess yes, on some innovating approaches that we've seen. Marina, have you seen some innovative approaches right now, and have you tested something? Yeah. Can you just give us some information about that?
Yeah, listen, you know, we've as I said earlier, really encouraged our partners and our publishers and tech platforms to really engage in this time frame now and get some POCs on the ground and get some learnings from those POCs. And we've seen some really great results, and I can definitely raise a few headlines of those. So we've got a few case studies out there. We've got one with Programmatic, obviously on the sell side tech, who work with Verve buy side platform, and Screen Malmo on the advertiser side. They were able to increase reach by 21% whilst leveraging our ID. We've got another with OSDS Data Solutions, who again were able to address more users in cookieless and increase reach by, I think, 28%. We've got one with Adasta. That's an Italian digital sales house, same theme, right? Increasing reach again by over 25%. So the themes are all very similar. That there's a current blackout on existing audiences across Safari and Firefox. So really, the pubs, the brands, the tech that support them should be leaning into the solutions to generate incrementality today, which is obviously going to only grow consistently as we move towards this deadline.
Thank you, Marina. Christer, I know it's very interesting to have you on board and in this panel today, because you're representing the publisher side. We are, I would say, Marina, Paul, and me more in the ad tech industry, and so you are representing the big side of our market. So do you think the identity tomorrow is an opportunity for publishers in the open market? What is your point of view?
It depends on exactly what you mean by the open market, but I think what we're planning for, and I get this a lot from other publishers as well, is open RTB and kind of that free-for-all buying and different variants, even advertising networks, like to the degree they still exist, will be far less important or even available when you do your strategic planning, like in 3 years, 5 years. It's you cannot build your, like, whatever share of revenue they represent today, you can't build your business model on that in that time frame. And people have different perspectives. Some are very vocal, using very strong words. We're not sure exactly where we are now, but I think from our perspective, it's going to be far less important, like relatively speaking. So that means, it means that you've all, as a publisher, since we've started our business, I think in 1869, and we have to rely on different revenue streams since then, and we've always done that. But that's just more and more important for publishers. You need to have multiple revenue streams, and for advertising, if you want that to be a big part of it, you either need to be extremely strong in authentication, or you need to be number one in whatever, like, niche or market you've defined, number one or a very strong number two, right? That could be a geo, right? And in smaller market, you'll see the market leaders that reach the half the population in. If you're in certain industries, you have a publication that can reach everyone or close to everyone. In marketplaces, you have players dominating. So if you have that kind of position, even if people are not logged in, you can still have a decent case for advertising. But you need multiple legs, right? And if you're a small publisher with specific, somewhat specific content, but not really big in your cycle, you have to rethink your business model. And publishers been doing that since the internet came along, right? Or even before. So it's not something new, but I think this is a major change. It's a breaking change if you follow the technical term, right? So I mean, maybe you have to pay for articles again. That was a super silly idea in the 90s because it was really hard to do. You would have to spend 7 minutes with your credit card to read a poorly formatted article, and nobody would do that. That's why we gave it away for free, right? But today, at least in most European markets, you can like put in your phone number, put in a 4-digit code, and you've been charged like €0.5 for an article, and that could be like one of many models. But I think this is really a breaking change for a lot of publishers, and some might not make it, and new ones will take positions. But yeah, it also reminds me that for the publisher that goes the authentication route, this is also very interesting opportunity for a lot of growth, right? Because in the past, you had advertisers didn't really care about ad tech, and it has nothing to do with the people in ad tech who are really friendly and very skillful, but it just didn't really matter to them. They really didn't care about ad tech. That at the most they complained to their agency about the cost of ad tech. That was like the how far they went. But when you bring up identity, then you get their intention in a completely different way. And I feel like it's more or less, I speak to advertisers almost every week about this topic in some shape. So for publisher and there's a huge opportunity to get a closer relationship with directly with the advertisers, and also I think it's important for all the ad tech in the middle to help facilitate that, because there's a lot of really hard technical challenges that needs to be solved, because shipping a UUID around as a cookie ID, and it doesn't feel like it's that dangerous, but the moment you start shipping phone numbers, emails, references to other things, or the depth of the data that advertiser has in terms of what a consumer does, the security and everything you have to do just becomes a lot harder, and there's a lot of things that need to be worked out for that to happen.
That's true. That's totally true. And we're every day discussing more and more with our advertiser right now about all these topics. So that's really true. Thank you, Christer. Really briefly, because I guess we'll run out of time soon. Marina, would you have something to add?
On the publisher side, in terms of how they should engage on that front, yeah, I mean, publishers are, they're the gatekeepers of identity, and in the post third-party cookie world, they'll have an opportunity to continue to effectively monetize their traffic and control their data. So I think key for publishers will be to find a technology solution that can help them, one, address their cookieless traffic, two, take into account privacy preferences and comply with privacy regulations locally and internationally, and have developed mechanisms to ensure that publisher data is protected and only shared with authorized monetization partners. I feel like somewhat of a broken record here, but I feel like the world, we are so focused on identity as a challenge, and we really should be thinking about it as an opportunity. It's not just regulation, it's around performance. It's like the cookie has been broken forever, and so really this is an opportunity for us as an industry to really lean in and work together and drive towards a better future that will bring all sides of the ecosystem good results. I think generally there needs to be better alignment probably between pub and advertisers and the platforms working together, specifically in this time frame right now, to really be vocal about what those tests are and what they look like, so that you get as much participation in those POCs as possible. But yeah, that sorry, I went around the houses a bit there.
Thank you, Marina. Just to maybe, Paul, do you have any point of view about how advertisers are dealing with all these topics right now? Do you have any chance to discuss with them, and What do you think about it also?
Yeah, yeah, I have that's kind of my job. Half of my job is talking to the advertisers, which is weird coming from the publisher side. So it has been a learning for me. The things that they do and don't care about are very different to the publisher side in some cases. I want to pick up on something that Moana said about the opportunity. I do think this represents a massive opportunity for yes, for diversification in your approach to things, because there's just an opportunity, especially for advertisers, to just be smarter in your approach and to gain leverage in the market that way, right? Depending on the use case, whether you're looking for reach or whether you're looking for a specific audience or whether you're, all the other use cases which exist, then there are different tools and different routes to get you to those outcomes. And then, so I think there's different opportunities to establish yourself as a differentiator. And yeah, I do talk to them, and they are embracing it. Someone asked me the other day if like advertisers were afraid of it, or if they didn't want to talk about it or whatever. And I'm really glad Krista brought up that that's not the case whatsoever. They're very much leaning into these things. I'm shameless plug. I'm working on the advanced frequency management part of our platform, which is the the modeled version of frequency caps at Xandr, and there's tremendous excitement. Anytime I bring this up in any meeting, there's tremendous excitement for the simple fact that some of these tools that are over reliant on identifiers, and they have been for so long. Sorry to say, in our platform, if you select a frequency cap, if there's no identifier, you don't serve the people for the most part, and that's not well known, right? But so we're doing tests right now. Again, shameless plug, should have been in the previous question, apologies, but we're seeing tremendous increase in reach across device reach, right? Safari and Firefox are usually completely off the menu if you want to serve a frequency cap, but we've got good results with an advanced frequency management tool, which is showing reach across device. So I can't really remember what the question was, or if I've gone any way to answering it, but there are, it's tremendous opportunities and very, very exciting time to be in ads. I feel lucky to have come into ad tech at this point in time, because everything's so massively disruptive and it's so risky, but also so much opportunity. So embrace it, I think.
Thank you, Paul. We can see your passion. Thank you so much. Then we have a little bit more time. So I would like to just put two questions in before we maybe just take a question from the panel. To close our discussion, I would like to ask you, to all of you, what you think should change in the next 12 months in our industry, so that we can progress and incorporate this world of identity. And another question also, so what do you think is really important to look at if we want to be ready when we'll have to be ready? So it's a kind of large question for all of you guys, but we have a lot of people looking at us, and maybe it could be useful for the people here to know where and what to look at in the future. So again, ladies first, sorry.
Yeah, sure. So, lean into the solutions that are available, test, learn, and feed those learnings. Your monetization strategy is like an engine, right? And you've got to put fuel into the engine to make it go. So really generate the results. I think generally we need to do more education. We need to do more testing. Like I mentioned earlier, perhaps a bit more alignment from pubs to tech to brands to agencies. But this is an opportunity. Take the time now before we really are in a different space, and build an identification strategy.
Clear. Krista, maybe?
Yeah. I would, answer these two with the same answer. I think number one, and this is for everyone who isn't there already, but we need to stop believing in silver bullets. The world will get somewhat more complex than the same cookie being available everywhere. So it's just, we've even in this panel or across the industry, people have different views on how big an identity can go and how it can work across different publishers or different environments. But there's not going to be like one identity to rule the entire World Wide Web. I'm quite confident of. And the second is you need to look at your authentication strategy. If you're a publisher, if you're an advertiser, is there a way to design or think about my user journey to incorporate that? Like that could be everything from previously it was super hard for fast food restaurants to establish a good a loyalty program. After the pandemic, that is super easy because wherever you go, you can order your food with an app. The moment you have an app, it's so easy to ask people to log in, and then you give them some discounts or whatever, and voila, you have a loyalty program with lots of data, right? And the last is what we say. I mean, when we talk to advertisers here, at least in our market, we say you have two different media channels. You have one which is the Chrome world, the programmatic world. You have a lot of good strategies there that you might want to continue. Please do, but you have another media channel that's called Safari, and here we have half the people, half the reach, half the inventory is in the second. So take your budget, divide it in two, and allocate each, and do completely different strategies, because those two media channels require different strategies. So that's more an advice to the advertising side, because the future is here. It's halfway here already.
Thank you, Christy. Paul?
Yeah, I would agree with all of that. I would give two sort of perspectives to my answer, as I've tried to do the whole day. I would give the Chrome cookie specific perspective. I do think that more people should be leaning into the privacy sandbox, and at the moment it can seem like this academic wall of just complex solutions and in-depth conversation, and it really needs to be more high level, almost stupid opinions or ad tech opinions thrown in there, like how does this solve that? Because I think that the whole W3C conversations has the tendency to go into this academic place and forgets maybe some of the solutions that they're trying to, or the problems they're trying to solve. And I think more people from the industry should be throwing their voice in. So lean in, so that we have the best chance of getting what we need there. But from a Xander or an industry perspective, again, lean in, as Morena was saying, to betas, alphas, give us feedback. We thrive on feedback. We need to do case studies. We need to get the word out there. We've been talking about a lot of these things for a long time now, and we don't always see traction in the way that we probably should be, or at least for us at Xander. And I think Morena as well would probably agree, although ID5 has tremendous traction, I have to say. But just generally speaking, just lean into those things and see whether they solve the problems that you have with your businesses, and help to inform us at Xander, who's very much an intermediary or a market maker, what we need to do to enable the market, or continue to enable the market the way that we have done.
Thank you, Paul. I will jump just on one question that we received with the minute we are left, and maybe Paul, you could answer it, or whoever. How should a client notoriously protective of data use their first-party data and evolve its approach to use programmatic in the future?
Yeah, I think this is a good question. I think we kind of touched upon it in bits and pieces, Krista and Morena. I think both said bits to it. I think from a Xander perspective, I think it's totally understandable to be protective of data. I do think that attitude may need to slightly change a little bit, but that said, I do completely understand it. And that's why at Xander, we're building tools, for example, which controls what data is shared with which partners. Morena was touched on the importance of that. So we're building out controls, and also the importance of building your own data sets and still organizing deals. Like the deal environment is still going to be a tremendously important place. Curated marketplaces are also increasingly important, and programmatic deals. So there's two approaches. We have an agnostic as ever approach at Xander, which is that you may want to just use your first party identifiers and throw them out into the wild and see what comes back. But the other approach is to build your own audiences, lean into seller defined audiences, which is an IAB initiative, or to build your own segments on our platform, and then use the tools that we're currently building to manage those, how data is shared with other partners. So the tools do exist.
And test and learn. Just test and talk with us. All right. I think we just, yes. All right, Nick, I think we just finished on time, I guess.
Yeah, that was fantastic. Thank you all for opening a great discussion on identity and privacy. Clearly sharing some very diverse views. It's obvious that I think it was mentioned that we're entering a period of massive disruption, but the message is pretty clear. Lean in and test. There's so much opportunity. And as we continue the conversation on cutting edge technologies that enable us to kind of confront cookie deprecation head on and explore solutions that are effective and privacy first, I'm really pleased to introduce Ilaria Zampori, who's the General Manager for Quantcast for Italy and Spain, and Francesca Grassi-Mantelli, who's the Digital Marketing Cluster Lead at Vodafone, who'll dive into this topic further. Over to you, Ilaria.
Hi, Nick. Thank you. It's a real pleasure to be here with you guys. I'm going to start sharing my screen. Hopefully everything works. Okay. And let's see. Okay. Do you see it? Yes. Okay, perfect. Well, good morning, everybody. It's, as I said, it's a real pleasure to be here with you today. Before I start, I would like to do a brief introduction on who is Quantcast. Quantcast is an advertising technology company that has developed an innovative audience intelligence platform, allowing brands, agencies, and publishers to know and grow their audiences online. So during today's presentation, let me try to move slides. Okay, during today's presentation, I will take you through and I will speak to you about the future of online advertising in a world without cookie. We're going to go through the state of the industry, so the changes that will define the future of online advertising. We will try to understand together what will happen after 2023 and the implication for the industry. We will also talk about the alternatives we already have available and are rising up in the market about a future without cookie. And also, finally, Francesca will present the Vodafone approach to the cookieless world and the result of the testing activities that they have conducted with the Quantcast cookieless solution. Let's start with some context. Chrome, the world-leading browser with 70% adoption, announced in early 2020 that will no longer support third-party cookies starting 2022. Now, third-party cookies, of course, are those cookies that don't come directly from the site you're visiting, but as the name suggests, they come from third parties that collaborate with the site or technologies that allow to deliver targeted ads. Now, an announcement that if on one side represented a revolutionary change for the industry, for the online industry, on the other one was not unexpected. I mean, as we already spoke, other browsers such as Safari and Firefox have already implemented some time ago some solutions that did not allow the usage of third-party cookie, moving towards an approach that take more into consideration the privacy and the transparency towards consumers. A scenario, however, that is in constant evolution. I mean, last June, the American company has in fact communicated the decision of Chrome to make its decision effective only towards mid-2023, postponing by almost 2 years the elimination of third-party cookies. And maybe this date will be postponed even further. Now, however, we believe that brands, agencies, publisher, and tech companies should remain focused on finding long-term solutions in order to continue operating effectively and efficiently in the market, and also to take advantage of the cookieless inventory that is already available. Now let's have a look at the state of the industry and the developments that will shape its future. Digital advertising is booming, and this is thanks to a digital transformation of companies, businesses, and consumers' behavior that was further accelerated with the pandemic. In 2021, global ad spending on digital advertising has grown by 20% to reach 455 billion euro. That is definitely an extremely positive and encouraging result. Now, while the ad spend is growing, its distribution is heavily skewed towards what we call wallet gardens, which are those closed ecosystems formed by the giant of tech that do not share data, information, and technology. 80% of the digital ad spend flows into them. Now, these tech giants, despite the fact they don't produce any original content, they have used their privileged position in terms of data and AI to create advertising solutions that work and have made it extremely easy for advertisers to spend money in them. In this scenario, there is a growing attention on the topic of privacy with new regulations that have been implemented in the various countries. We remember GDPR in Europe, that was followed by California Consumer Privacy Act, and the last one in terms of timing, PIPL in China. Now, there is an increasing pressure, therefore, on governments around the world to create and enforce legislation in these areas. And because of this, consumer awareness on these issues have never been higher. What is clear is that we have entered the age of privacy, and the spotlight will remain on consumer data and on consent. Now, this complex scenario will be soon further modified by another major change, the elimination of third-party cookie, as we said. Now, historically, cookies have been the basis through which we understood audiences, and advertising impressions were measured and were optimized. Today, we must say, though, that this technology is dated. I mean, the reality is that the data collected from third-party data is weeks, if not months old. And in addition, the source is often unknown. Someone collects the data, classifies it, packages, and then pass it on to one or more third parties. And if we look at this graph, it is also very relevant to realize that we already live in a world without cookie for 50% of the total internet activity. Now, this is why we need to find an alternative solution to third-party data now, not only to anticipate the near future and to be ready for the changes, but also to be finally able to understand and measure that 50% of audience that currently we don't plan. All of these changes are inaugurating a new era of the online advertising, but not without implications. Let's see them together. We will not be able to rely on the past method for identity and measurement. And why? Because third-party cookies have been used for associating events across websites and have been provided a useful, even if limited, understanding on consumer insights and consumer habits. So since third-party cookies have been central for audience planning, campaign activation, measurement, and attribution, the pre-creation will have certainly an impact on how these capabilities will work in the future. And the current method are no longer sufficient. The cookie transition could also lead to more power to the wallet gardens. Now, wallet gardens can rely on a huge amount of first-party data they have collected through logins and through their accounts. For example, Google can leverage 1.8 billion of active users on Gmail and 2 billion users on YouTube. So, and in addition, let's not forget that the value of a user for a publisher is directly proportional to the amount of data available. I mean, today, someone who uses Safari is of a less value for a publisher than someone who uses browsers that can be profiled using third-party cookies. What that means is that that user contributes less to the advertising revenue that allows the publisher to produce relevant content. And finally, if it becomes increasingly difficult for advertisers to book effectively on the open internet, which are all the websites that compose the web outside of the wallet gardens, well, it is obvious that there will be more investment allocated to the wallet gardens. Now, these crucial decisions over the next few years will decide the fate of the open internet. So it is essential for the advertising industry to focus on creating solutions that allow everyone, publishers, advertisers, agency, to access a technology that can match the walled gardens for effectiveness, efficiency, scalability, and easy to use. I mean, the future of the open internet does depend on this. Let's look at the emerging alternatives to third-party cookies. So several solutions are emerging in the market. First-party data, which of course are becoming more and more relevant, which basically is data collected directly from the websites and available to publishers. We have cohorts, which are a group of consumers divided by certain common characteristics. We have the world of contextual, which refers to the context of the content on which the user is navigating on. And we have identity solutions that basically identify and track the user using different technology. At Quantcast, we believe there will not be one size fits all solution, and that the most valuable solution will be a comprehensive approach that will combine different types of signals. Thanks to the work that we have done in the past years to find a viable long-term solution for the cookieless, we came to three main conclusions: that cookieless solutions must be multi-signal, a viable alternative must integrate different type of data to achieve a granular and deep understanding of the user behavior on the open internet. That measurement is key because it allows to work on optimizations and improvement of campaigns, and growth can only happen, it cannot happen without measurements. And that cutting edge technology can help us to get there. I mean, we need to leverage AI and machine learning to make sense, to give sense of the data. And this technology can support us in filling the gaps that we have in understanding, you know, and supporting us in working on the predictive modeling. Now let's have a look into a bit more details on our approach on the cookieless world and how Quantcast is approaching this in a multi-signal way. We look at different signals, and our approach is not dependent on only one signal as it happened in the past, but because we want to be able to continue operating in the market independently from the possible futures that will happen in the industry. So the signals we're looking at are first-party data, as we said, which are becoming more and more relevant. And our first-party data come from our solution, which is Quantcast Measure, an analytical tool where we have more than 100 million web destinations that uses our Quantcast tag. Then, of course, we look at consent. We need to make sure we have consent from the user before we're being able to provide him with some personalized ad. And to do so, we use our Quantcast Choice solution, our consent management platform that we have launched when GDPR came into place. Of course, we look at contextual. So we rely on natural language processing and machine learning to analyze billions of sites and optimize the open internet in what we call a topic map, a multidimensional analysis of the context, content by topic and by interest. And then, you know, if they are available, we also look at signals like identifier and cohorts, but only if the signals are successful. I mean, if the signals hit, you know, some regulatory obstacle or they fail to reach the scale that is needed to be using these signals, our algorithm can also work and without them, and it's not dependent on them. And finally, we look at all the other signals that we'll be able to, we will be able to continue using also without third-party cookies. That's language, time, geolocation, and device. All of the signals are going to be powered by our AI and machine learning engines to make sure we have a flexible solution that can accommodate all the changes that the industry might be going towards, and is going to look at the strongest signals to make sure we work in accuracy and scale. The diminish of third-party cookie is definitely near, but many players in the industry, after the decision of Google to postpone the date until 2023, have decided to reallocate their people and their resources to other projects. However, cookieless solutions are already available, and starting testing today allow us to experiment and to be, to be future-proof for the future. 3 are the concrete reasons that we believe we should look at to start testing right away. The first one is surely to reach new audience in a more effective way. I mean, we are able to expand our reach on inventory, where we have not planned until now. And at this stage, this inventory is also more cost effective because of lack of competition. Of course, we don't expect this to continue, but this is a good also opportunity to start testing now. And then also we have time to experiment, mean that we are able right now to measure and optimize. We're able to verify the differences between a cookieless environment versus a third-party cookie environment. And Francesca will take us through this and give you her experience in that sense. And of course, why waiting for 2023 where we can start testing and being ahead of competition right now? Now, I am going to pass over to Francesca, who is going to take you through the experience of Vodafone in a cookieless world and the results of the tests they have conducted with Quantcast. I'm going to try to give you control. To you, Francesca.
Thank you, Ilaria. Hi, everyone. Good morning. So my name is Francesca Grassi Mantelli. I'm responsible for digital marketing and digital acquisition sales at Vodafone Italy. I'm particularly happy to be here today with a partner like Quantcast, who operates in the open internet, because I think that obviously we have a very clear mantra, revenue and efficiency. However, I think as advertisers and as marketers, we have strong responsibilities in terms of nourishing a healthy ecosystem where every player, is appreciated for its contribution and for the value it brings. So today I'm here to basically substantiate with numbers what Ilaria showed you. Let's see if I can switch.
You should have control.
Yes, it should go, but it's not. Okay, it's going.
Yes, we see it.
Thank you. So, as I said, we're Vodafone Italy. Probably everybody knows it. International corporation operating in the telco industry, headquartered in London. We are very much invested in the digital transformation that Ilaria was talking about earlier, which for us means investments in R&D, so like product, making sure it's easily accessible digitally and provides a simplified service for our customers. Secondly, of course, it means investment in human capital, so in digital capabilities that have been across the years insourced in Vodafone, to be sure to really drive, our digital strategy. And from a more, media and communication perspective, this means our investments are generally, depending on the market, but very much shifted towards digital rather than offline channels. Is it going, the slide? Takes some time that it goes. There you go. So what is our approach to the cookieless world? I would say our approach to innovation in general is and has always been that of a startup, basically. Continue scouting and testing of solutions available on the market, which again, I also think it's, again, another responsibility big corporations like us have, because if we don't test, what's on the market, who's going to do it? We do that via, first of all, leveraging very much our first-party data, which we have lots of course. And secondly, by betting on artificial intelligence, because it helps us with scalability and efficiency. It's better, the usual thing we always say in this industry, but it's better if our digital experts and traders can spend their time on thinking about what strategy they want to put in place rather than optimizing the very single line item. All of this we do with a strong focus on privacy, because at the end of the day, we say first-party data is not our data, it's our client's data. So, and as a telco, we're all telcos, but especially Vodafone, we're very much focused on privacy. Yes, so Quantcast, I guess Ilaria explained very well the product. Why did Vodafone Italy test this solution? Really for three main reasons. One, because it doesn't rely on third-party data. I know we've been in the industry for quite some time. We know that third-party data is very often very inconsistent and not very valuable. Secondly, because they leverage on different signals, so it's not too focused on just contextual, for example. And third of all, and I guess more importantly for us, is because Quantcast has a strong expertise in the AI business developed throughout the years. Everyone who's been doing performance knows that the algorithm is works. So I guess these are the main reasons. And another more operational thing I would highlight is that this was the only partner with whom we could run a clean A/B test, cookieless environment versus with cookies environment, because otherwise, it's always difficult to really highlight the results of specific tests unless they are run in an A/B test way. So that did help us. Our objectives were, of course, to explore this cookieless environment ahead of the times, but as Ilaria said, not so much ahead of the times, because there's already a lot of users who don't accept cookies. There's a lot of browsers who don't accept them. So really it's now not very much ahead of the times, but there are obviously with cookies solutions. We wanted to be able to compare them. And secondly, because we wanted to understand and monitor the validity of our tech stack for measurement on one hand, and also for attribution. We've developed an internal data-driven attribution model, which we very much lean on to understand if we're spending well our money at the end of the day. And so these were the main two reasons why we wanted to run this test. Few results, I think the numbers are quite clear. So just to give you some more details about the test. So we focused on our fixed line business, so selling via the digital channels, the fixed line for consumer base, so not business. Our KPIs were business related because they were sales, not qualitative traffic or viewability or KPIs more related to communication, but very much business. And the data was, of course, confirmed by our ad server, which we directly run. So the test started from being the typical 3 weeks test, and it became, I guess in November, it became an always-on activity, which we have been running ever since, which gets incremental budget month on month. So for the moment, the results are continuously positive. On one hand, for the price, so cost per sale has been more efficient by 15%. This is also due by the fact that we're buying better because, as Ilaria said, there is less competition there. So at the moment, CPM is 53% lower. It was even stronger, this number at the beginning. But I guess that's not the main figure we look at. What's interesting for us is an 18% increase in conversion rate, because that means that consumers there are, of better quality, more interested. So these for us have been very encouraging figures to decide to basically keep the test running. I keep saying test because, as I said, that's how we work. We don't work on very long-term planning. It's very much day by day. And so, yes, I hope that we were clear. I wanted to gather just a few clear messages, but should you have, specific questions or comments, here are our contact details, and thank you for having us.
Great, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ilaria and Francesca, for another great discussion, piece of insight. Fabulous to hear that we're all making progress when it comes to a post third-party cookie world. I just wanted to go back to the previous two conversations. I think it's very clear that we will have to continue talking and working together as an industry as we prepare for a world post cookies. At IAB Europe and in the Programmatic Trading Committee, it's a core focus of our work plan. And last month, we released the latest updated version of our guide to the post third-party cookie era. Within that update, we share a status of the latest industry and corporate solutions and a bit of an up-to-date outlook from where the industry is at today. This guide can be found on the IAB Europe's Knowledge Hub and will be shared in the chat. So please do take a look after today's Programmatic Day. We also have a dedicated post third-party cookie task force that meets bi-weekly. So if you want to join and participate in the conversation, please get in touch. So without further ado, let's move on to our next panel session, which will take a deep dive into the hot topic of CTV to explore what the programmatic opportunity in Europe looks like today. And leading this panel, I'd like to welcome Lauren Bigland, Marketing Director for MediaMath in EMEA. And again, please do submit any questions you have for our panelists in the Q&A. Over to you, Lauren.
Perfect, thank you so much. Hopefully you can all hear me okay. So very pleased to be moderating the CTV deep dive on behalf of MediaMath. We're going to be exploring the CTV programmatic supply chain and the buying options that are available in Europe today. We'll also be taking a closer look at how it's evolved over the last 12 months, sharing some best practices and looking at what the future holds for the channel. So I'm going to hand over to our panelists to introduce themselves. So Sam.
Hello, good to be here. So Sam Wilson, VP of Business Development and Enterprise Sales at Magnite. So working closely with our publishers and partnerships across EMEA.
Perfect. Colin.
Hi, everyone. My name is Colin Kurth, and I'm the head of biddable media at Publicis Media for some of our FMCG clients. And I'm very happy to be here. I moved from the US market to Europe about 3 years ago, and it's been a really great journey for me to see the evolution of CTV in this region specifically. So happy to be here.
Great. Chris?
Hey everybody, great to be here as well. My name is Chris Kleinschmidt. I am currently the head of platform sales for Samsung Ads across Europe. And very similar to Colin, I actually moved to London about 4 years ago from the United States. So again, kind of bring a unique purview, I think, into the connected TV world as it's evolved.
Perfect. And last but not least, Sarah.
Hi, I'm Sarah Standke. I'm Director of Business Development at the Trade Desk in Germany. I look mainly after our agency clients, educate them about programmatic and especially CTV. So excited to be here today.
Perfect. Thank you all so much. Before we get started, I do just want to clarify our definition of CTV. So for the purposes of this panel, we'll be using the IAB Europe's definition, which is CTV is a TV that's connected to the internet with video content delivered to the TV screen through that internet connection. Okay, so I think we're ready to jump into the first question, which is what is the current status of programmatic trading for CTV across Europe? And Sam, perhaps you can kick us off there.
Yeah, sure. And thanks for that definition, because everyone's is slightly different. So it's good to have something from the IAB. So yeah, the status is very different, I would say, depending on kind of which players that you're talking to in the market. So you've got BVOD partners, so the broadcasters, you've got fast channels, you've got device manufacturers like Samsung, and then you've got the telco and operators. So I think each of those kind of work with programmatic in a different way. And what we often find is that the kind of digital first businesses, the fast channels and the device manufacturers, they actually lean quite heavily into programmatic. They're across multiple markets. It's easy to partner with third parties that have got strong presences in those markets. And so they kind of get the support across each of those different regions. On the flip side, on the broadcaster world, they're often domestic. So they're just looking after one market where they're potentially very strong. They've got great agency relationships and have done for many, many years. So they have tended in the past to lean towards kind of more IO business and less programmatic, but we're definitely starting to see a shift there where the broadcasters are really interested in like competing direct versus programmatic. They're making some big bets in that space. And so all of them really do have some sort of strong programmatic story in place or strategy in place in that world. Previously, the broadcasters have been a little bit concerned about, privacy, brand safety, and all of those things that we hear a lot about. And I think the tools are now there for that to be controlled, right? So the user experience is fantastic, and you've got all of the controls and safety on the brand safety side. So we're definitely seeing a shift on the broadcaster side. We're loving working with the fast and OEM partners. They're booming at the moment. And so, yeah, that's kind of a high-level snapshot of what we see.
And Colin, do you have anything to add from your side?
From the buy side, I think that even just hearing Sam kind of describe the current industry right now and everywhere that CTV can be accessed, I think that as an advertiser, we have to be up to speed and adept at understanding how to access that inventory in a very fast-paced kind of shifting landscape. And so when we think about from a buying perspective, CTV, we have to be really careful to follow that definition of CTV that you just outlined there, because otherwise we'd be going in 10 different directions. Thinking about connected television, we're very much, the inventory is becoming more available. We think about it as, buying it in private marketplace deals. If we go to some of the broadcasters in the specific markets, we'll do potentially programmatic guaranteed deals. And in those, I think we're going to hopefully start to add more audience layering on top of that to ensure that, it's from a targetability standpoint, we're finding the right consumer more than just in content adjacency, if you will. And so, it's definitely evolving. And, we're excited to see it evolve, but, it's becoming more complex as well.
And how does this compare across regions, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, a lot of what I'm going to say is going to echo a little bit of what Sam said, but I'll even take a step further. So about 7 years ago, when I was back in New York in a previous role before Samsung, I specifically remember actually getting briefs and RFPs for about $100,000 spent in the United States on connected TV. And at the time, I was actually at AOL, which was one of the largest, online video and connected TV players in the space. And we couldn't even deliver $100,000 in the United States 7 years ago. Like, that literally gives you an idea of just how crazy this world has become. Obviously, the United States is a multi-billion-dollar industry, or connected TV is pretty close, but definitely kind of ramping up. What I would say, and again, this is more from the sales side perspective, so there might be some difference of opinions, but there's a direct correlation to how large and how dominant the local broadcasters are in each individual region. Sam just kind of alluded to this. And again, if I think about the United States, there's a lot more competition when it comes to content. There's a lot more competition when it comes to, again, having access points from a consumer's perspective. So as a result, you're going to see connected TV obviously kind of take off and scale. But when you think about that specifically from a European perspective, when you think about markets kind of like the UK and Germany, obviously they're larger markets, but there's also less dominance from one or two big broadcasters. Whereas when you think of a region like France, Italy, very different ballgame, right? You've got a couple of dominant players. France is a little different with IPTV, but you think of a market like Italy, where it's a handful, like two broadcasters that are really dominating everything. You're going to start to see a lot of kind of disparity. So I always say there's a direct correlation to how big that broadcaster is, and that will then kind of dictate how savvy the market is when it comes to connected TV, much less programmatic connected TV.
Amazing, thank you. And I think when we look at the biggest developments that have been made over programmatic CTV over the last 12 months, obviously you've just talked about the last kind of 7 years, but Sarah, maybe you could walk us through the last 12 months.
Yeah, sure. What we've been seeing is the increasing popularity around CTV with both consumers and advertisers. So we basically see it across the board. And this also means that we're seeing that audiences are increasingly moving away from watching linear TV. I think we're getting to this point a little bit in the next few questions, but there are developments around how to move or how to measure incremental. So this is definitely a huge topic in the last 12 months, and the expanding appetite for AVOD services from broadcasters is leading to increased investment opportunities for advertisers as well. So if you look into the US again, just last month, Netflix announced that it is planning to introduce an ad-supported content in the near future. So I think that's a very big step for the whole industry around CTV. So we're already seeing significant advancements being made overall in Europe as well. So CTV in the UK, for example, where Sky Media announced last year that it would allow all of its content to be traded programmatically for the first time. And Channel 4 is also launching the real-time bidding on its All 4 suite for content. So I think that's a huge progress around the overall programmatic trading around CTV, and especially in the biggest European markets like Spain as well. We just announced a cooperation with the leading TV broadcaster Mediaset to be enabling to buying L-shaped banners on linear TV through our platform. So I think there is lots of development in the whole area around CTV. And to maybe summarize this, I would say like broadcasters expanding their offer in connected TV, as well as programmatic linear is a huge topic. And then the streaming leaders, Amazon, Disney, Netflix, who start to offer ad-supported options or preparing to do so in the future.
Amazing.
Yeah, Sarah, I think it's interesting, I mean, that you bring up some of that conversation around how it's the traditional broadcasters and networks that are starting to enter the space. As an advertiser, I think that's probably the most exciting part about European CTV expansion. And it gives us so many more options to integrate from a single source. So I think a lot of the European buying, from my perspective, is that we still kind of have hubs. We have local teams that are very integral to our media buying concept, and they have the relationships with the broadcasters. But in the event that we're doing something a little bit more global, or if we're thinking about a pan-European type of activation, for us to be able to have a single touch point through a technology like the Trade Desk, or have SSP partnerships like Magnite, to be able to integrate into those networks and to get that reach, and to kind of start to move beyond just a traditional handshake and traditional linear type of buying process. That's very exciting for us, and I think that's the momentum where we would love for the industry to keep going, so that we have these choices, even though it makes us have to be a little bit more nimble.
Well, and on these, actually, just to put this in a little bit of context, so this is actually something as well where when I think of Samsung, again, being the largest smart TV manufacturer worldwide, there was a lot of discussions earlier today that kind of talked about the difference between probabilistic, deterministic data, and how does it all kind of come together. So at Samsung, and again, this is not a shameless plug, but this is basically, whenever we think about our value prop, Samsung has its own first-party viewing data on over 20 million TVs in the EU5. So this is 100% deterministic data. Nothing here is modeled. And if we look at 2020, so the first year of COVID, it was the very first time that we actually saw more time being spent streaming versus watching linear TV on those 20 million TVs across the EU5. When we look at the first half of 2021, we actually saw, again, the average time spent per user streaming increase by 32 minutes a day. I mean, these are pretty massive stats. Now the caveat to all of this is often, when somebody's in one of the streaming services, they're not all ad supported. So it goes back to kind of what Colin was saying earlier. So this is going to be a huge monumental shift, but I think COVID elevated this entire thing, and we're seeing this with first party data. So it's no longer a hypothesis. This is proven at this point. And we're not the only one. We're not the only company to say that. That's been verified by a lot of others.
Sam, do you have anything else to add to that, or are you happy for us to move on?
No, just over the last 12 months, we've seen, massive scale, as Chris alluded to. And I think, the exciting part for us as well is that's not just in the BVOD world, it's outside of that. And people have been crying out for this for a while, and it's happened and it's here. So I think that's incredibly exciting for everyone. We've got buyer adoption. People, I think there's been a lot of education process over the last 12 months to 24 months on the buy side, to like, why is CTV so important? Why is it a great medium to buy? Why is it great for their clients? And all of these are coming into fruition now. So yeah, the last 12 months have been great, and even more looking forward to the next 12 months.
And I think our next question is about buying options, and we've obviously talked about programmatic guaranteed and kind of the PMP deals. But what are the buying options that are currently available for CTV across Europe, and how are you typically buying, and through what deal type? Colin, do you want to expand a little bit more?
Yeah, I think that in expanding on that, we still do a lot of we have a lot of local buys that go through our AV teams and the broadcast teams that have those relationships with Channel 4s or whatnot. But increasingly, we're seeing, as we've said, the availability of that inventory through programmatic channels and through DSPs. And so we're doing that. But I think that with that, the evolution really has been, we have to address this audience in a multi-layered fashion. It can't be siloed anymore. And I think, unfortunately, that's a slow moving ship when we're talking about trying to get everyone on board with digital. So we do as much as possible AV neutral planning and buying. So that means that we have the broadcast team talking to the digital team, talking to the local teams, and we're making sure that we're not overlapping, but we're actually adding to plans, and we're adding to our reach through various, whether it be through the buy type or through the means that we buy with our partners like Samsung, et cetera. And so, but the important part about this too is that as we're starting to scale and do more of this, we're needing to, the buying options mean that we are be more critical about what's coming back to us. And I think that we'll see, and maybe I can allude to this in maybe a future part of the conversation, but how is CTV, does it get the same amount or more attention than linear? That's going to be, it maybe has some people a little bit scared about kind of what linear versus CTV versus maybe social video is, but they're all coming together, and we have to think about it in kind of that bigger sense.
Does anyone want to weigh in on that? Has anyone else got any thoughts?
Maybe just to add to that, when we talk about the deal types that we're seeing in Europe, how CTV is bought through our platform, we mostly see it via private deals. So a few guaranteed deals, especially when it comes to Q4, where inventory is rare and everyone wants to place their ads in the audience that buys the gifts and stuff. But there's also biddable in PMPs with buy-side decisioning, so targeting, frequency management, and stuff. So, but yeah, mostly private deals.
So we see the same on our platform. PMPs, programmatic guaranteed. Obviously, programmatic guaranteed. While we scale up our sports offering, which is pretty large right now, in a live environment, is essential, right? You need to make sure that during an ad break, you are receiving an ad back and it's of great quality and it's been pre-approved and all of those great things. So programmatic guaranteed is a big thing for live, PMP across the board. And interestingly enough, I think, we're starting to see, and I don't expect it to kind of skyrocket, but we're starting to see some open marketplace spend coming through, particularly over in the US, small green shoots. So I think that's quite interesting, because previously there was literally none, and now it's sort of there's small amounts coming through, and it will grow, a couple of percentage points. And I think that's down to technology and controls that are now being implemented, so that you have that power in your hands as a publisher to control that.
I was actually going to bring up that exact same one. That to me is probably one of the biggest differences between the US and the European market. In Europe, there literally is no open marketplace when it comes to connected TV. And not to say we should be rushing directly towards it, because obviously there's a lot of kind of inherent dangers with an open marketplace. But having that access point for advertisers is what's going to be what really kind of rocks the boat and kind of pushes this forward. So I definitely actually think that that's something in Europe that we're going to start to see more of. Maybe not in the back half of this year, but definitely come next year. So that's kind of looking forward a little bit. There's definitely going to be, I think, more of a prevalence when it comes to an open market. And a lot of that, as Sam was saying, will be kind of come to the tech integrations, but also the privacy that will be coming out into place. So we'll get to that fun topic here in a little bit.
And the only last, pardon me. The last thing I wanted to maybe interject in this conversation really is about the why. Why are we buying private marketplace? Why are we doing programmatic guaranteed deals? From an advertiser's perspective, it's still very important for us to be able to choose the content that we are a part of. And when we have maybe limited targeting capabilities, when there are other kind of barriers with this particular technology right now, for us to be able to position ourselves in a brand safe, kind of contextually aligned way with our brand, it's most important for us, since if we can't do program level targeting, we need to make sure that our broader brand is aligned with the right content. And so it's to be able to go in and to get those through a private marketplace where we have a relationship with the publisher or with the network and our PG deals, that's just utmost importance for us. And that's why we do so much of that type of buys.
I know we kind of want to switch topics, but I do actually want to jump into that a little bit. I want to kind of, Colin, get your take on this, because I actually think that this is a big misconception when it comes to connected TV. And for everybody out there, this is not pre-planned, so this is the first time Colin's hearing this. But what I would say is oftentimes, like, people kind of talk about this idea of knowing exactly which channel their linear ads will be running against. And that's great, but we also know that's not entirely true. Like, you'll usually get some premium channels, premium programs, and then there's some long tail that will happen. But we all know it's a brand safe environment, it's on TV. I think the mindset of online video has trickled into connected TV. And the way that I see this, and again, I'm speaking purely from our AVOD fast service, this is all premium content. This is a very brand safe environment. The only thing that might not be brand safe is like a news channel that's talking about the war, but you can make the argument that that's so incredibly premium. But like, I think there's a huge misconception there, because most of the times when I talk to agencies and advertisers, they're buying connected TV, their immediate reaction is YouTube. That's not brand safe. They don't know what content's on there. And that's where I find it fascinating, because obviously there's a subset of YouTube that's incredibly premium, but there's 95% of it that isn't. So I think it's also kind of distinguishing those different pieces and using this as an education process for a lot of advertisers. But I'd be curious, Colin, if you have any thoughts on that, because again, broadcaster BVOD, we know is incredibly premium. We know that's brand safe. Is that not the same concept for all other connected TV inventory?
So I think that it's been a journey with this particular type of media, because you'll have different scope of, or a spectrum of different brands that are more or less adverse to types of content. And I think that from my perspective, my experience with the brands that have engaged with CTV, especially in the aggregator space, not directly with the broadcaster, there are quite a few different channels or aggregated content that wouldn't be brand safe. And it's again, that depends on the conservative, kind of scale of where your brands are coming from. But just like any other media, you need to do your homework and understand where your media is going and how you're going to measure that in a brand with maybe a brand safety verification partner, which is still very much in the digital space. It needs to be, kind of addressed. So to advertisers, from my perspective, it's about just being comfortable because you've done your homework and you feel like you have the right layers of protection.
Perfect. I feel like we've spoken quite a lot about the challenges of scaling programmatic. So I think let's maybe talk about the success stories that we have in terms of scaling. Conscious that we're running short on time. Does anyone have any kind of examples of where it's working really well that they can share?
Maybe I can jump in. As Sam mentioned, with the COVID situation, where everyone basically stayed at home and the brands tried to reach their audiences where they basically are. We have a case study with a leading fast food brand in Germany, where they actively wanted to promote their takeaway options to a younger audience, like 18 to 49, where they basically had the hypothesis that they are not reaching those audiences during the first COVID lockdown via linear, because everyone wanted new content, wanted to have new shows and stuff like this. So they specifically created a campaign where they try to target a demo audience with third-party data that they could leverage through our platform. But they also created a strategy where they used like gaming audiences from custom audiences, and they also specifically targeted gaming consoles by make and model, like Xbox and PlayStation. So they were actively trying to get those gaming audiences through the environment where they basically are. So this is a huge advantage, I would say, of connected TV. And then they had the theory and they try to get their audiences with an omnichannel approach. So they basically retargeted those users who saw the CTV ad on a mobile device and within the same household. So I think this is kind of a very great success story of CTV, where you connect this with other channels, but also have like the targeting capabilities that you don't have in linear. And yeah, it was a huge success story in the German market with a completion rate over 90%. So I think that's a pretty nice case, and we're seeing that from other advertisers as well right now, where they are actively trying to create those specific cases.
From our side at Magnite, we're seeing huge amounts of success stories, which is great. You know, part of the question is, you know, how can buyers scale up programmatically? Well, the good news is it is scaled up, so they can do that programmatically. But you know, from a success story point of view, we recently launched a case study with Heineken, where we're kind of measuring success on those areas, and we saw a 55% increase in brand awareness, which is massive. We saw 45% with digital-only viewers, which again is a phenomenal stat. And 1.3 million were incremental viewers. So, you know, these are big numbers. And if you're not advertising across CTV on these platforms and these mediums, then you're missing out on a huge amount of your target audience. So, you know, from our side, it's quite clear, like it's a must-have for brands and advertisers. And we're really excited about kind of keep pumping out these proof points so that people get much more comfortable with it.
We can all agree with that one. Any last thoughts about success stories? If not, I'll go on to the final question.
I mean, from Samsung's perspective, oh, sorry, Colin, did you want to go ahead?
Well, what my case study really is kind of involves Samsung TV actually. So we, you know, we were looking to reach a broader audience. This wasn't, no, we didn't collaborate on this one. You know, so we had an 18 to 44 audience in the UK that, you know, we saw dwindling kind of linear reach. And so what we did an AV neutral collaboration where we did linear BVOD and connected TV with Samsung, for example. And, you know, both between BVOD and Samsung, we actually saw 30+% incremental reach within those audiences individually. So if you can imagine that was an incredible success story for our advertiser.
Colin, I'll mail you the check afterwards. Yeah, like, I mean, honestly, we can put the data behind this. So this is, again, if we think about the UK specifically, you know, right now in the UK, we've got about 7 million TVs that we're currently tracking, again, with that deterministic automatic content recognition data. And again, kind of similar to what Sarah was saying as well, but specifically, if I again look at the UK, if we look at all of the TVs that watch linear TV, so right now that makes up more or less about 80% of our TVs in the UK. So about 20% are your definition of a cord cutter, no linear TV at all. But about 80% of those TVs will watch linear TV. We then kind of break those into 3 buckets, 3 equal buckets, and then kind of average the time spent watching linear TV. Your top third, your heaviest linear TV watchers, they will literally watch 78% of all the time spent consuming linear TV that we see on our Samsung TVs. So you have a small subset. You have 1/3 of 80% of TVs watching nearly 80% of all the linear TV time that we see on Samsung TVs. Again, that is a massive stat. And if you look at the frequency from a linear ad and how often it's hitting the same people, that's where I think advertisers are going to start to say, hey, we got to wake up and figure out how to kind of get to the other people. Not to say there's going to be a way to address every single one of them, but the example that I bring up again is that linear reach extension. There were so many success points that we have that, again, we've done with the Trade Desk, we've done through SpotX with partners like GSK, but there's a load of others that we've done this and again, back this up with our own first party data.
I was just going to say, to kind of reiterate on Colin's point, Media Math, we're seeing 30% incremental reach on CTV campaigns as well. So, you know, you are getting that new audience, which is amazing. And we've got one quick question through from the audience, and then we'll do a very quick final question. But from the audience, how do you think the introduction of RTB 2.6
cookies come out full-fledged, that's going to give us a lot more opportunities to actually then take this to advertisers and do the third-party tracking that everybody needs. This will happen in 2022. This is the future, and this is when everything changes.
Sarah?
Yeah, I completely agree with Chris. I think identity is a huge topic for CTV as well, especially as you all know, I believe that the open source initiative Unified ID 2.0 is also going to change content and how we collect personal email addresses via connected TV. So to make this addressable and to have the consent of the user and know how we can approach them, and that they know how they pay basically for the content that they can consume. So I think that's a huge topic. And I think the developments around Netflix, Disney and Co will be another perspective for CTV globally.
Sam?
Yeah, so I think, we're now on parity with kind of linear TV for user experience on CTV, which is fantastic. And now we get all of the benefits on top of that, right? So you've got the ability for, data targeting, new formats coming through for shoppable TV and those kind of areas, which is awesome. One-to-one advertising is a huge possibility. So I think there's really cool innovation around formats and distribution, and actually new advertisers coming into this world that have been previously blocked out from the large buys that they have to do on traditional TV, and can now kind of start targeting advertising on CTV. So really excited about that.
Colin, over to you for the final word.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. I don't think it's debatable whether or not this is a growing and very important kind of medium for advertisers. And so, Sam mentioned it, but it's about commerce. It's about interactivity. It's about how do we start to bridge the gap between something that was a kind of a lean back experience in your living room to being something that's shoppable. And, I would love to see more of that. And, hopefully we'll see that maybe done programmatically through, partners where we can access and, use those ad units, across all of our type of buys.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. I think we're out of time. We're a little bit over. Apologies. Great panel.
That was great. Thank you, Lauren, and thank you to everyone on the panel for a really kind of lively and authentic discussion. Another example of positive disruption and innovation in our industry, with the accelerated adoption of streamed content. Great to learn that we're seeing increased scale, addressability, and targeting options in programmatic CTV. So now for our next session, and one I'm extremely passionate about driving as the chair of the Programmatic Trading Committee, diversity and inclusion. How can we make programmatic more accessible? Vitus will lead the next panel of experts in a discussion to address how we can demand and drive diversity and inclusion in the European digital advertising industry today. So over to you, Vitus.
Thank you, Nick. Thanks a lot. Happy to be here, and thanks for inviting me. It's a topic that is quite dear to me as well. We are a full stack programmatic platform out of Europe, but only 25% of our team sits in Europe. So happy to share and happy to discuss with the panelists. So maybe we can start with a round of intros, and then we'll dive into the discussion.
Sure. Should I go first? I'll
go please, first. Jacqueline. Yeah.
I'm Jacqueline Boachi. I'm VP of Customer Success at Programmatic. So managing a team of customer success managers and operation managers as well. So great to be here.
Then I continue. Hi, everyone. I'm Amanda. I'm building up the global programmatic consultancy group at the Show Heroes Group, which is an organization for ad tech products, and we have over 20 locations worldwide.
And I'm Michael Alaye. I lead business development for EMEA at IAS, working primarily with programmatic platforms and social platforms.
Great, thanks. Thanks for the intro. So I thought that to kickstart this discussion, I would like to just share a couple of research that we came across by preparing to this. I'd like to start with a short screen share, talking about some of the data. Why are we talking about this, right? So, kind of Gallup and Harvard Business Review recently published a couple of researches where they talk about diversity and inclusion, not only from the point of view that is the right thing to do, but also as a business case for diversity. And what they're saying is that diversity and inclusive cultures, lead to engagement, which lead to innovation, and then this leads to better business outcomes. And just a couple of data points here, that a combination of engagement and gender diversity, only gender diversity, leads to higher financial performance in the kind of 58% of the cases, and then it also kind of increases the innovation revenues. But to achieve that, there are certain threshold targets that need to be met. Organizations only experience success or growth when, even if we're talking about gender diversity, the female manager kind of percentage reaches and exceeds 20%. And then the results or positive results can only be felt if it's not only diversity, but also inclusiveness, right? So if there's diversity, but the culture is not inclusive, the positive results are not there. So that's why I guess we're talking about both of those topics combined. And I guess we can start maybe this discussion from a challenges point of view. In your opinion, looking at the European digital advertising industry, what are the biggest challenges that we as an industry and companies within those industries face in those markets? I don't know, Michael, do you want to start?
Oh yeah, happy to. I guess first I'd say that I think that we've done a lot in recent times in order to be able to further the conversation around diversity and inclusion. I think that's wonderful. I think that, across the industry, there is an ever increasing commitment to champion DE&I as a movement. And, that has to be applauded. But I think it's clear that there's still much to be done. Otherwise, we wouldn't be discussing it. There's been a WFA report that pointed out that, in their recent D&I guide, that there's so much to be done, that has been done in order to sort of improve representation, especially of women. You alluded to that as well in what you've just shared. But I think that the industry needs to do a lot more in order to be able to promote broader inclusion. And I think that there's still a lot of lapses there. I think where we've got a lot more work to do. So from my standpoint, just to talk about seeing what a challenge respectively would be, I would say it's just something as simple as seeing people who look like me at the top of the tree, right? When we look across media and programmatic as a whole, I don't think that I'm seeing, from my perspective, as many different diverse, people that would allow me to be able to understand that this is the industry for me. This is what I need to be striving for. So for me, it would be that. How do we approach that?
Thank you. Jacqueline?
Yeah, definitely concur there with Michael. I think it's that image of coming in and being able to see from the bottom to the top, that you are represented in a company. And I think that we're progressing, but I think there's still a lot to be done. And I think that's why it will always continue to be a topic. It has to be a priority. It has to be something that becomes the normality that we are striving for, rather than it's a moment in time that we have to try and get a solution for. So this has to be ingrained into businesses to realize that we do have to invest in diverse audiences, in diverse people within the business. It's how a business becomes successful. And I do think it's about accountability as well. And I think we're starting to see that in the industry as well. So businesses are taking a stand. They are making sure that they are bringing in organizations to support them. Now people can go to people's websites and companies and see, what is their actual diversity, equity and inclusion statement. What do they believe in? How would they be representing me if I join that company? So I think there are strides have been made, but I think there's still some way to go. So, but what I do like, and being in this industry as well, is that I think if you look at our industry and compare to some of the other industries, actually there's a bit more diversity there. So, you know, if I was to take maybe, I don't know, finance, you know, would I see so many Black people up in the higher chain within the business? Maybe not, you know. So I think it swings and roundabouts. So I think from our industry, I think let's continue to make those strides.
I think in addition to what you both said, most important, like one of the challenges is that we are not only talking about that, but I'm really happy that also like finally in like this programmatic space, this also becomes a topic. So everywhere it just pops up. But generally, I really think that the real challenge is not only to talk about that or have like those values on a website, but really, really live with that, because we all as people want to be valued for what we are. And as soon as we start working somewhere or work with another company, we can feel if this is real and honest or not. And I think this is the real challenge, not only to have this as a new buzzword for the next company, but to really live it and mean it. And I think this is also what a company should strive for, to just have the real impact and the opportunities which come with that in the mind, and not only the point we need to do that because everyone just does it now, and if we don't do it, we are not part of that. So it really has to come with an honest standpoint.
Sorry, if I can, I very much want to echo what Amanda said there. I think it's super important that it's not a gimmick, but it's organic. And you know, I think the proof's in the pudding when it happens, and I think it's also sometimes quite clear when it seems like it's a gimmick. It's important to talk about, but it's got to be done from, exactly as Amanda said, from an honest place, from an organic place.
Yeah. So some of you mentioned, I think, so, you know, the challenges are there. The industry is moving at a certain pace. So, but then talking about the opportunities, and then in general, but also, you know, what the companies can gain, you know, getting better in D&I. So, you know, what is your opinion on what are those opportunities, which kind of, you know, signal why should we do this then, and why should we focus on the topic? Who wants to start?
Yeah, I think diversity brings around new ideas. You know, if you look at businesses that have more diverse audience and more diverse people within the business, you know, you come up with newer ideas. You're not bucketed into one way of doing things. And I think that's the innovation part that allows people to move forward within businesses, where you collectively can have different ideas, different views, but be able to build on something that's amazing within a company and be heard. So, you know, again, that inclusion part is making sure that businesses hear from everybody and they take into consideration those thoughts. So, and I think once you become that kind of business and that organization where you understand and value the people that you bring into the business and what they can really bring to the success of everything, I think that's when, you know, you start to feel the impact as a business. So yeah, that was what I would say is where diversity is really good. And it's a big reason why I like to work in an industry, or at least be in an office where there's diverse people, because you have diverse views, and, you know, we don't all want to be the same.
Exactly. And I mean, we are all working in the advertising industry, which lives from creativity and innovation, which is driven by diversity and innovation. And I mean, this is not only for us why it's so important. Generally, this is a super important topic, but this actually is a key factor for us, which would drive our business. So it's actually a win-win situation to focus on this and having a big part, which is, I don't want to say again an honest part, but like a natural part maybe of the company.
Yeah, I think, you know, you demonstrated earlier on what effect having diversity can have to even the bottom line of a company. And important to help companies understand that it is in their best interest, a win-win, like Amanda said. Another thing that I would say that I think is quite interesting, again, going back to the WFA report, it is very interesting if anybody wants to sort of look at that, but it kind of highlighted that agencies who obviously we work with a lot in this industry, very much leaning into D&I, and they've got champions to this cause, and that has been very evident. But as an industry, I think it's also become clear that we're not quite practicing to a certain extent exactly as we preach, because if we look, taking it back to kind of like a working environment, if we look at keywords that are being used, words like gay, LGBTQ, Muhammad, Islam, so on and so forth, all of those kind of words, due to kind of legacy reasons, are automatically blocked. And as a result of that, that's stopping advertisers from appearing next to content that they would actually want to be associated with. So if, as an industry, we want to be able to move forward, things like that have to also be taken into consideration in order to be able to actually move forwards.
Yeah, thank you. So I think we'll get back to this topic, because I think you touched also the topic of what can we do as organizations to influence some of the things outside of us and not only focusing internally. So I can just share as well, I think what is also important, and what we try to practice is focusing on strengths of people, and then talking about the values and the benefits of diversity. We do these team grids in terms of strengths, and there are some tools that allow us to do that, like Clifton, Strengths Finder, and all similar tools. And then you see naturally that when you combine a lot of the different cultural experience, you have a much stronger team. So it's like, you can even measure that based on like a team grid and numbers, where the more diverse the team, the more kind of strengths you cover within your team and within your leadership team, and that's very important, not to be one-sided. So just sharing some experience here as well. But yeah, continuing on what you mentioned, Michael. So we talk about the internal companies, but then there is all of that external world, which you touched a bit. So what can we do as advertisers and as platforms when it comes to supporting diversity outside of our organizations through the budgets, the policies, the things that we do that then influence minority publisher groups or some kind of different views and different cultures? Have any experience or anything to share in this area?
I mean, us personally, we don't play directly in a place where we would have publishers kind of come in and evangelize them, so on and so forth. But just to go back to what I was obviously referring to earlier, what we want to do is to be able to continue to educate people as to how these kind of practices can be avoided. We do have things in place. I don't want to make this a technical conversation. This is a conversation about D&I, but obviously I work at IAS, and contextual avoidance and targeting and suitability of things that are in-house. We have tech that basically caters to this, that allows us to be able to allow people to actually create targeting lists that are based around D&I. I would ask agencies to be able to sort of come to us and look into this, so that we can work together in order to be able to eradicate these legacy ways of targeting and blocking that really are quite inhibitive to being able to work within the environment that we actually want to work with, when we want to be able to promote positive sentiment around all forms of diversity.
Yeah, thank you.
Just to touch on what Michael was talking about, and I think this is very true, and I think you are starting to see agencies put commitment into D&I. But on the other side, you've got the publishers as well, where it's more about how do you bring the data together? How do you match who the audiences are. Some of it's been sensitive over, previous years. And it's now about really talking about it in the market. And so I think us as an SSP, for instance, we're having those conversations with publishers to make sure, how are you segmenting these kind of audiences? Are you working with your DMPs to do it? How are you tagging your websites? All of those things. And then at the same time, it's working with the agencies to make sure that they know that those are the kind of groups that they could actually start to spend on. So I think there's definitely work to still be done there, but it's all an educational piece, I think. And so I think everyone needs to be invested in making sure that happens.
Yeah, in addition to this, I mean, this is also one of the challenges the advertiser side is facing, because this also becomes more and more relevant, and exactly those features or tools or mechanisms like scanning sites for key values, having semantic matching, and so on is something what is then so relevant for campaigns, because how to have like this contextual connection to all the different words of diversity and inclusion. You cannot just have it with cookies or identities of those identifiers. It has to be deeper, it has to be more contextual. And this also needs to come more and more from the demand side, because if they want to have that for their campaigns, I mean, IIS is capable of offering support with having your solutions. Also, Show Heroes can offer our solution, because we are also scanning semantically the sites we are working with. So there are already the possibilities to have those campaigns. It just needs to be requested more often. And what we can do is also educate the advertiser side and say like, hey, we can do this if this is relevant for you, because maybe they're not aware what technically is actually possible for us.
Great. So shout out to the agencies and to the demand side. So it's all possible. Cool. So maybe then moving to more the practical side, and can you maybe share, what are you doing? What examples do you see in the market, not necessarily within your companies, but outside, practically to ensure more diversity in digital markets? Jacqueline?
Okay, yeah. I was just taking a bit of a think on that one, but I think, so one thing that we have done, and I think was interesting to see, is so you've got, I think it's how we try to make sure that we are bringing in those diverse groups into the industry. So there are companies like MIFA, Media for All, Brixton Finishing School, there's just new groups that are setting themselves up now to make sure that we can start to bring those new diverse audiences in. And, Michael touched on it earlier, just making sure that people feel that this is an entry point into the industry, and this is an industry that they would feel comfortable in. So I think there are definitely companies now that are focusing on making sure that the right messaging is happening in terms of bringing in those new people from schools. It starts at the educational level, university, and making sure that we can bring those groups in from a younger age. And I think that's what's going to be interesting about the industry. And again, that creates that diversity, the different level of thinking, and that helps the success moving forward.
Yeah, I think having employee resource groups are going to do a lot to be able to create a safe haven so that people can communicate, but then also get a little bit more of buy-in from senior leadership teams and the boards and the execs to be able to have a more in-depth understanding of what they need to be doing and the people that they need to be listening to. Jacqueline touched on it. Brixton Finishing School, I think, is an incredible initiative. I've been blessed to work with them in the past, hope to be able to do so again in the future. And there's also the Women Programmatic Network. That's an incredible initiative as well, and continuing to grow every day. I think something that we'll be doing at IAS will be that sort of internal training of people from different ethnicities and genders in order to be able to ready them for promotion internally. I think if we are talking about how we're going to make the exec team more diverse, I think at a point typically when you want to go and look and hire potentially externally, you're going to see a sea of, to be honest, white cisgender males. But if we want to be able to make that more diverse, then what we need to be able to do is have internal training to be able to allow people to be able to be promoted from within. That's something that's within our control. So that's something that I think we'll be looking to do more of at IAS.
I'd like to catch up on what you both said before, because I love what you said, Jacqueline, about also having people from the university being approached by this, but also on the other levels. So with this, we need to see, okay, what would be the best approach for what position in a company, or is it a student still, or whosoever. So for each person in the industry, there needs to be a special approach, and not for everyone. Joining groups will be the solution of that, because there's like a lot of self-initiative needed. But if, for example, there are internally, I don't know, task groups offered, or also coachings for the heads or team members, which you can participate in, education for the different levels, like those are, I think, the basic things what each company should provide, so everyone can be part of that. And what I also like is having exchange programs, especially if you have different locations worldwide, that you exchange people, so they will see the culture, the people who are working there, but also learn how they are working, what they are focusing on. Communication between the different cultures is so important to better work with each other and have a more efficient way of working together. And in general, I think that what everyone can or should do is just being sensitive to this topic and listen to the people, even though you cannot sympathize to what they have experienced, because you're not in the same body. You cannot feel that. You can still try to understand and listen. And I think if everyone would try that more and more, not only in the work surrounding, but also like in life in general, we will get all more sensitive about this. And I think it's important also to speak up if you see something is not fair, or you don't feel like, okay, you don't understand why something is happening like that. Everyone needs to stand up and speak up, or like find a person you can speak to, and a company should provide like a safe zone where you can talk about that. And if the people do not feel safe in the work environment, they will not have a good outcome for the company. And everyone needs to feel valued in the company and in general.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. ERGs, I think, have been very, very useful resource for us, especially in Programmatic. And I think we've got like 7 now. But I think on touching on that as well, I think what was good is that we started to do a diversity, equity, and inclusion report. So we'll do an annual report. We've got newsletters that go out quarterly. So it's making sure that we, again, like I said, it's not a topic that's going to go away. It's ingrained into the business. We've taken advice from a business, a consultancy outside. They've come in, they're really coaching us. They're building a strategy with us. And I think that's really helping. And actually that's making sure that people feel that they can talk, and we are giving the training to the managers to make sure. I think one training we had was unconscious bias, and conscious and unconscious bias, and it was interesting to just when you sit with different groups to see how things are valued, or how they see things from a different lens. So definitely I think it has to be that continued educational piece within the business and people talking. So to what Amanda said, it's speaking up, it's talking, it's making sure that if you see something, allyship, all of those things, you support your members and your team members within your organization.
Yeah, and I think, well, you mentioned a good idea on the reports. I think what gets measured gets improved as well, right? So focusing on that, then it goes to practical things. So I think we're out of time, but maybe any last thought that got missed out of in the discussion? Anyone wants to just last 10 seconds, 15 seconds.
For me, just to continue on from what Jacqueline said, I think you have to measure it and you have to make people accountable, which she also said, because if we aren't accountable for making diversity and inclusion, or if we aren't accountable, then we're under no obligation to move forwards. And I think we all accept that this is something that we have to do. So we have to understand what our company actually looks like. So those surveys, those things like that are truly very important to be able to really understand the makeup of how diverse as a company we really are, and measure that up against the company, other companies, the country, whatever it might be.
Yeah,
totally. In addition to that, also create diversity and inclusion positions. So specific people who are responsible for this and driving that throughout the whole company. And yeah, just one last thing, anyone can contribute to this and can open the eyes and speak up and see around. And I think we all need to be more sensitive in this regard. And yeah, this will already help a lot.
I think my last 3 points would be just make diversity a priority, keep making it a priority because it's really important. Challenge the biases around it. So, we need to keep thinking about, making sure that we are an equitable playing field for everybody. And then the inclusion is the last part. The inclusivity is really key, I think, in making sure that you can maintain a healthy, nice environment for members within your team. So I think those are the 3 actions that must continue.
Great, thanks a lot. Yeah, so I just will mention that I guess this is a great opportunity as well to increase the attractiveness of organizations, because everybody talks about talent scarcity, but the more diverse the organization is in the outside and looks out the outside, definitely you'll just naturally attract a lot more different talent. So yeah, thanks a lot for the panelists. Over to you, Nick.
Awesome work. Thank you, Vitus, and for moderating, and to all our panelists for shining a light on how we can bring diversity front of mind, the actions that can be taken from talent through to marketing practices and principles in order to make our industry more accountable and a leader in inclusivity. And diversity does and should encourage innovation within not our industry, but not just our industry, but in our organizations as well. So yeah, fantastic session. Now for our final session of the day, programmatic advertising, the future outlook, where Harriet Cunningham, UK Sales Director at Cybids, will lead a panel of experts as they explore the big topics and themes we should be focusing on today, and look at innovations and what's next for programmatic advertising. Over to you, Harriet. My mistake. Changing the script. Over to you, Elisa.
Can you hear me now?
And Harriet.
Oh, great. Thank you. I'll start again. Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. I hope you've enjoyed the fantastic panels so far this morning. And yeah, thanks very much for joining us. Over the next sort of 30 minutes, we'll be discussing the future outlook of programmatic, and the 5 of us will explore the topics and themes that we should really be focusing on as an industry, and look at the innovations and what's really next for programmatic advertising to ensure a sustainable future. As Nick said, my name's Harriet. I'm the UK Sales Director today, and I'm joined by 4 sort of wonderful industry professionals. But we shall dive straight into it with our first question. So programmatic advertising is currently going through a significant change with the depreciation of the third-party cookie, and sort of the demand for improvement around measurement and attention. So I'm really keen to hear what everyone's thoughts are on the #1 challenge that we face as an industry. So yeah, Elsa, we'll start with you.
Yes, absolutely. So hi everyone. I'm Elsa Domain Griffiths, and I am the Director of Digital Sales and Innovation here at The Telegraph. So yeah, so with the deprecation of third-party cookies, I guess just over the horizon for Chrome anyway, we know that this is already a reality for all of the other major browsers. I would say that things for the open web look relatively uncertain as things currently stand, with around half of the open web in the UK almost pretty much invisible via traditional cookie-based targeting. And prior, I guess, to Google pushing back their deadline for Chrome, I had hoped and I had thought that the market was starting to prioritize innovation. However, I think sadly a lot of the industry have simply gone back to their old ways of doing business, waiting for a silver bullet perhaps to materialize, which I can't necessarily see happening anytime soon. And a lot of the proposed solutions need really the vast majority of media owners on board, and with publishers, with publishers being far more aware of the value of our own data, I believe hopefully it's going to force the right kind of change. And one of those most obvious shifts, I think, will be back to quality, contextual, by valuing the environment in the right way, in the short term anyway, as the industry works out how to deploy their data strategies in market at scale. And I guess, just want to say, although this being said, now really is the time for premium publishers to pause, to reset, and also to create a new programmatic landscape, which actually really values premium regulated journalism in the right way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think all excellent points there in terms of the number one challenge we've got. Arthur, perhaps you can share your thoughts.
Yes, hi everyone. I guess I'll give a quick intro as well. My name is Arthur. I'm Director of Product Innovation at Xaxis EMEA. We're looking after programmatic around video, audio, digital, and emerging channels. So in terms of the main challenges, I think I just kind of going to echo what Elsa mentioned as well. In general, the kind of a depreciation of third-party cookies. I think everyone can agree that this is the kind of the main topic. Just listening to all the panels and previous conversations that happened today, it was touched on to some level, to some degree. So definitely one of the kind of a key challenges for the upcoming 12 months that we need to be addressed. And we need to be testing alternative targeting strategies, for example. I think what Elsa mentioned, it's important to recognize that a lot of channels within programmatic don't rely on cookies already. Just a few panels before us, we heard about the CTV and third-party cookie is not applicable for that. Audio is another example where it's not the case. So it's not going to affect all the channels to the same level, but it will have an impact in general in our in our practices and how we used to do programmatic, or the established way of doing programmatic that has been established for now years. I think there are multiple kind of solutions that are available to test, but important aspect to also keep in mind that when testing those solutions is it needs to be scalable to the same level to achieve some kind of a parity of what we can achieve right now, and ideally something that can be used across different formats and channels at the same time. I think there is also a challenge of maintaining the accuracy of all these different alternative targeting solutions, for example, especially important when we talk about retargeting capabilities, and just from pure frequency management perspective, the accuracy of those targeting is very important. But I also kind of want to mention is from the number one challenges, I think it's critical to look into the measurement capabilities. Targeting, of course, is only valuable if it brings return, and if we can't properly measure the value that it adds, it's difficult to assess even all of these alternative solutions that we're trying to test. So both targeting and measurement, I think, needs to go hand in hand, and they both have challenges and that need to be addressed in the upcoming 12 months. But if I need to pick one, I think measurement is going to be key to go forward.
Absolutely, and I think that's top of sort of brands and agencies' thought path too. Guillaume, I'm keen to hear from you. Obviously, coming from a sort of header bidding background, I imagine your vision on the challenges may be a little different.
Yeah, thanks, Harriet. Hi, everybody. I'm Guillaume. I'm, as you can hear with my accent, coming from France. I've been head of sales at Yieldlove for the past 6 years, and I'm overseeing our publisher acquisition growth on the Western European markets. Just Yieldlove in a few words, we help web and app publishers to enhance their ad stack and better monetize their ad inventory. So our core solution is based on heading for web, AMP, in-app environments. And so obviously, I can only also echo what Elsa and Arthur have been saying. This is definitely the biggest challenge the industry is going to face in the next 12 months. I think there's definitely, again, an issue with consumer trust that needs to be addressed, right? Where the human experience should already, with third-party cookies, be a priority, but the end of third-party cookies becomes an absolute necessity, right? So us, as a programmatic tech provider, I would say, we also play a crucial role to help enrich the data and bridge the addressability gap, I would say, that has developed over the years between advertisers and consumers. So the technology to support and facilitate this data enrichment process already exists, right? And notably, we use a lot of alternative identity solutions like ID5, Shared ID, Ramp ID, and so on, which are pre-bid compatible. I would say the thing is that first, there are still a lot of ideas existing out there, and they do not all get 100% consensus across all the programmatic supply chain, right? So I think right now the current best strategy is to use most of those modules and tools, right, not to miss out on any opportunity until more universal ID is used. If I can say maybe another quick challenge, because I think this is most what we'll be focusing on today, but I think we also need to shed some light on some often overlooked issue, which is the page performance. So this time focusing back on the publisher. So it has become increasingly difficult over the past years, let's say, for publishers to find the right balance between page performance and ad performance and navigate through regulations that are getting stricter by the day. If you go back a few years, basically, maximizing revenue was the main drive for publishers that were offering access-free content, let's say, but sometimes too often to the detriment of the quality of the content and the user experience, right? So it was mostly about running more ads to get more revenue, right? Then what should have happened, basically, Google has been having a pretty stricter approach on the SEO front and have penalized massively publishers with most impactful updates on their search engine algorithm, right? Mostly to go after black hat SEO practices, and as well with the core web vitals, which are like a set of specific factors that will evaluate the overall user experience on the website, like speed, responsiveness, visual stability of the website. And basically what happened is like now first user acquisition is much more costly than user retention. So now publishers are much more working on trying to find the right balance. And that definitely is a challenge, right? Between, again, the page performance, the way the website is working, and how they monetize their audience. So I would say that as a tech provider, our role as Yieldlove is double. Make sure to still provide state-of-the-art technology, right? That has limited impact on the client side, but still generate great profit for publishers. And next to that, educate and stress how important it is for publishers to resist the temptation to think more ads and more revenue, and instead kind of show them how they can reap the benefits from finding the right balance, again, between page and ad performance.
And I think it's a good point, isn't it? You know, thinking ahead to kind of what's coming next rather than sort of chasing that short-term goal. Thanks very much, Guillaume. Moving on to you, Ionat.
Hi, thanks, Harriet. Hi, everyone. My name is Ionat. I'm the co-CEO of Verve Group. We're a vertically integrated ad platform working across, let's say, the omni-channel user journey. So we work in mobile, in web, and CTV that were mentioned already before. So coming back to the topic and the question and the challenges, I want to start with the addressability, but then as the conversation went on, I'm thinking ad effectiveness is probably how I would put everything together. We need to make sure that in the new world order, our ad experiences and our results match the old world in a certain way, right? Meaning we want engagement, we want ROAS, we want other KPIs to continue to match what we've been used to, and we need to work with the technologies that are available out there and test and iterate and collaborate. I think that's my key point there. And actually we've seen it, right, in the last maybe 1 year, 2 years since let's say the cookies start at least being talked about being deprecated. There's new ideas coming into the market. There's a lot more collaboration than we've seen in the past. The learnings are being shared. So yeah, I think what we're trying to do is make sure we maintain the same level of ad effectiveness as we go through this. And I think Arthur mentioned it's not only about cookies, which is an important one, but on iOS, we had ATT already for 1 year and more, and the other channels are even more fragmented, right? So the challenges of ad effectiveness are across, let's say, across channels, and we need to solve from them with better and new tools that are more tailored to the let's call it new world order, new privacy and regulation world order.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, there's lots of commonalities between your sort of number one challenges positioned there from all kind of sides of the market. So moving on to our next question. So what about our sort of number one opportunity? What should we be making a priority sort of together across the industry? Guillaume, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think we also there need to take a step back and kind of focus something that might seem, again, overlooked, but I would say it's all about building trust again. I think first, opportunities and challenges are two sides of the same coin, right? So with the transition to first-party data world, I think there's a massive opportunity for us to address this lack of trust that's had for long characterized the third-party cookie or data era, basically. So the trust issues, I would say, for both users and publishers. So users are often still today experiencing very poor ad experience, bad quality ad fraud, malvertising, redirects, etc. The list is long. And that eventually leads to an increase year over year of adblock usage, right? Over 30% in average are using adblock, which is a real issue again for any kind of publishers. And then the second, I would say, is still for users, the data protection concern, of course, right? Today, with third parties, there's definitely a lack of control, transparency over how their personal data is used, shared with whom, used by whom, and obviously first party will go a long way in kind of addressing this issue. So to counter that, I would say publishers should try to elevate somehow the user experience by building trust, right? Let users experience value in exchange for their content, give them control over their own data, be ethical, transparent, right? And this will naturally increase the amount of data they will get, and with it possibly to create strategies at scale. Now I would say publishers also have trust issues, and this time with ad tech providers like Yieldlove, basically, because on the tech side, I definitely think some consolidation needs to happen, and this is also a massive opportunity. I would say today, publishers are flooded with unsolicited prospection from ad tech companies wanting to have a piece of the cake, let's say. So the problem is that out of 10 companies, 10 solicitations, probably one will actually be competent, reliable, and have an honest approach, I would say. So there's still an opaque cloud around the supply, I would say, making it very hard for publishers to commit without having second, triple thoughts, basically. So I would say it's definitely an opportunity for us to kind of bring more transparency as well on this side.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you've teed one up perfectly there. I'll pass over.
Sorry, was that for me, Harriet?
Yes, yeah, sorry, I'll say it to you.
Yes, so I guess I can only talk from our experience as a publisher, which tees up quite nicely, doesn't it? But our strategy is really what sets us apart here at the Telegraph. So this is the company-wide focus on providing the very best subscriber experience in everything that we do, as we strive to achieve the 1 million paying subscribers by 2023. And so thanks to our subscriber strategy, which we put into effect around 3 to 4 years ago now, we are effectively a data business. We have over 7 million registered customers and just under 745,000 subscribers. And these are paying customers, of which the majority are digital. And thanks to our unique customer IDs, we can now understand these people, because they are people, across their devices, and we can target without relying on cookies. So a huge opportunity, at least around this challenge of data in general, is the from our perspective and from my perspective is the adoption of clean room-based technologies in a safe and very compliant manner. So this is a safe way, typically, for advertisers, agencies, and publishers to answer the challenges around the cookie deprecation across, and I think we've mentioned this throughout the chat so far, but across targeting, across measurement, across frequency, capping, and so on as well. It does obviously require a bit of work on all sides to get us to a point where this will work at scale. However, we really do need our brands and our agency partners to invest in testing these solutions to push that conversation forward even further. I mean, we personally have invested in the area, and we work with a partner called InfoSum that powers the data matching product, of which we've called Unity here at the Telegraph. And we've seen some really fantastic brand uplift results for advertisers that really exceed not only market benchmarks, but actually our own traditional digital performance as well. So, I mean, that for me is one of the key opportunities coming up.
Yeah, that's a fair one, and certainly something we feel too, Elsa. Arthur, obviously you're deeply ingrained in the Group M agencies, and I'm keen to hear your thoughts on this one.
Yeah, and I guess thinking from the agencies and clients' perspective about the priorities and opportunities, again, I can only reference the previous question. So with deprecation of third-party cookies, what we should be focusing on, and it's mainly just testing all the different alternative targeting measurement capabilities now. Obviously, from priority point of view, just to get ready for the time when third-party cookie is going to be deprecated, but also as an opportunity, it's possible to extract value from this type of the targeting right now. Again, something that we talked about in terms of reference of some other formats. The channels don't rely on cookieless at the moment. By testing these alternative options right now, you can extract value by running campaigns on browsers that don't support this, or restrict the third-party cookies by running campaigns on CTV and trying those new targeting options by running audio campaigns as well. So it's not just preparing for the foreseeable future, but also something that can be extracted as a value right now. So I think this is from kind of my perspective, I think this should be a priority, and at the same time, opportunity as well. I think in the future, it's possible that we'll have to rely on different providers and different solutions, and different clients will have different needs. Not necessarily that there's going to be one solution that's applicable to everyone. So individual clients will need to kind of assess based on their marketing strategy, based on the formats and channels that they're using, what is the most applicable one, and potentially they will need to use separate ones for different activations. But then we'll have to think, how do we connect everything together while we're going through this transition period? So I guess as just a short answer, testing and learning is probably should be our priority, and at the same time opportunity in the short term and in the long term.
Yeah, exactly that. Testing as many opportunities as we can, and understanding what's going to work for our consumers and brands alike. Keynote, over to you. I know that you've got some thoughts on this too.
Yeah, I have actually an easy example for where to start testing it, as Arthur mentioned, right? We have iOS, we have Safari. I think Elsa mentioned in the UK, 50% of the users are invisible, so to say, to the third-party cookie. So I think it's an easy place to start, an easy place to start learning, leveraging first-party data to optimize and iterate on those learnings, right? And when the cookie crumbles, so to speak, you already have a position in the market, either as a publisher, but also as an agency or brand, and you can double down on that and actually even take market share or share of mind in the, let's say, year to come. So I would double down on that, and it's easy. It's already there. Prices are a bit lower than on the other let's say browsers. So yeah, and the tools are there. Yes, it will take a bit of work, and there's quite a bit of iteration. So there's an investment for sure, but yeah, I think it's how do you say, it's an investment that will pan out.
Exactly that, investments into sort of getting started on innovation so that we can have a sort of sustained future in that way. All right, so we've got a couple of questions to go, 5 minutes. So the next one is really around innovation. So which sort of innovation is really going to sort of drive our industry forward? Elsa, I'll start with you.
Yes, of course. Yeah, so I think yeah, from my perspective, perhaps maybe a mixed model of advertising and subscriptions will become ever more prevalent, and there is a sustainable model in that mix, whereby the subscription data can feed the advertising products with declared, consented, and unique data. And I think that companies that can support this very specific model in a very privacy compliant way will really benefit.
Great. Thank you, Elsa. I'll actually come back to you in terms of innovations.
Sure. I might be a bit biased as we have a strong background store footprint in mobile in-app, but we believe strongly on device processing and actually not storing the data, and even for measurement, both for targeting and measurement, running things on device, iterating and improving, and not leaking any data outside, neither into the bit stream or anywhere else, not even on the device itself or in the app itself. So that would be the first one. The lighter version of that would be obviously contextual, where you don't run it on the device, but you use the signals that you have available to improve your ad effectiveness as much as you can. So those would be the two ones.
Yeah, exactly. And Arthur, I imagine it's going to be your teams that will be testing lots of those contextual innovations. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, when it comes to innovation, and I'm thinking about this question a bit more broadly from the industry perspective, and I'm going to put a little bit of a Zax's hat here as well when answering this. I think AI and machine learning has a much bigger role to play going forward in driving the whole industry forward. We know it proved to be very successful on the media buying side in programmatic. And I would say developed and matured in programmatic at the moment, but I think it has a much wider application going forward across other parts of the industry, including planning, reporting, and measurement, and could be actually as a linchpin to connect quite fragmented landscape that we are operating. Again, when we speak about the data, the privacy, the upcoming changes, AI can help us to utilize the data sets that we have at our disposal with deterministic or probabilistic approach to maximize the effectiveness of usage of this data that's going to be available and might be restricted in some cases. So I think from the cookieless and privacy focused perspective, I think AI should be on the top of the list of driving the future and growth of programmatic, especially as programmatic expands to new emerging channels. There's going to be potentially new data points that we can utilize, not just for those specific new channels, but also those channels can fuel the decisioning across the entire ecosystem. And I can see that the AI potentially can connect all of the disconnected platforms and reduce some of the fragmentation, especially for more complex omni-channel strategies when multiple channels or formats are involved. I think machine learning is going to be a critical part to connect and simplify the complexity that we have to operate, and especially with coming up changes in the future.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, here at Cybids, we have a similar vision. There's lots of data, there's going to be lots of things that will change, and knowing our industry, those changes can sometimes happen quite literally overnight. So having a solid AI tool to help you test and learn quickly is going to be more important than ever. Thanks for that. And Gim, over to you. What innovations do you think that are really going to sort of drive our industry?
Yeah, I think so from a cookieless perspective, I think I can really echo what my colleague said here. I laugh when you guys mentioned testing, because I think A/B testing is actually our middle name, because I think every day there are new technologies emerging, and from a publisher's perspective, we are responsible for the way they monetize our website. So they don't care about cookieless, contentless, and all of this. So we are tasked with constantly A/B testing all the solutions existing out there to improve the overall performance, whether it's like based on AI, machine learning, alternative ID solutions, contextual-based solutions, or perhaps also increase a bit more the use of curated marketplaces. But I think as an overall industry, and I want to risk myself now to say some words that might be a bit scary. When it comes to digital immersive advertising, right, with metaverse, augmented reality, virtual reality, perhaps, so this has been going on already existing for a few years, but perhaps this is the emergence, I would say, of a new reliable programmatic advertising channel. So right now, we are really, I think, on the verge of a technological disruption, right, with Web3 as well. So again, metaverse, AR, VR, and that will likely play a big role, I think, within 5 to 10 years in reshaping the whole programmatic supply chain, basically, especially in a world where first-party data will be king. Concretely, by combining real and numeral and virtual and virtual worlds, brands and retailers can really create a whole new or unprecedented customer experience, right? So I would say already now, this whole virtual world is set to be the intersection of entertainment industries, gaming, shopping, community, right? And already counts hundreds of millions of active users, right? So if we look at the market value, I think this year it's planned to be like roughly 40 billion USD. If we look at 2030, it's going to be almost 700 billion. So it's hard to ignore those numbers. So of course, like for every technological breakthrough, it will be met with a lot of skepticism, right? Many questions are yet to be answered. Will it be really decentralized? Will it be safe for my data? Will it have any impact on the mental health and so on? But definitely the industry will have to go through significant technological changes where buying, like tools to buy and sell programmatic inventory will have to be adapted, and new know-how will have to be built so that brands can really engage in a more meaningful way with their consumers. So I would say, to wrap it up, it's still a long and bumpy road on this front, but it will highly rely on AI. So yeah, Arthur, I'm looking at you right now, and machine learning, basically, and combine it with first-party data. And if all works, basically, it will really become a reliable additional channel, I would say, for buyers looking to optimize really their omnichannel strategy and yeah, to improve the overall, I would say, add value to the whole programmatic supply chain.
Yeah, lots of innovation needed for some fast changes, and looking ahead to 10 years to how different our sort of industry landscape will really look like.
Hologram ads, perhaps.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, as long as it's not in my house, I'm okay with that. That leads us nicely on to what will have to be our sort of final question for today. So how can we ensure a sustainable future for programmatic advertising, and a couple of different takes on this. So Enoch, we'll start with you.
Sure. So the way I understood this one is more about how we can make sure that our industry will exist in 10 years or 100 years, right? And if I'm looking from that perspective, I think the first thing I'm thinking of is the consumer and what their needs are. Their needs are for premium and proper content, right? That needs to be that needs to be based on a sustainable business model, like as I said, subscription advertising. And if I'm thinking about advertising, well, the ad experience should be personalized, should be relevant, should be clean, right, of spam and all of the other things. So I think we need to do as good of a job there as we can, basically the best job that we can to ensure that the consumer experience is great, both from an advertiser and publisher perspective. And we as technologists, I guess that's our job to ensure that this this gets done. And that's, from my point of view, what will ensure a sustainable future for a sustainable and how do you say, thriving future for our industry, if I may add.
Absolutely, and keeping that focus on the consumer so we get people keeping coming to the internet. Elsa, I'll move on to you.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, so I mean, I think this comes down to two very separate considerations, and I really love the earlier panel as well, because I think the first is it is really investment in people, and more specifically in D&I. I mean, diversity, as I think we all know, has been shown to drive team performance across every single area. So if we're thinking around problem solving, around innovation, transformation, productivity, resilience, the list goes on. You know, a study that McKinsey did relatively recently noted that diverse teams are 36% more likely to financially outperform non-diverse teams. So I think these companies I'm going to mention now were called out earlier as well, but I would really encourage everyone to look at DigiLearning, to look at Brixton Finishing School, and many other companies out there who are leading the way and disrupting the creative advertising tech industries in the way in which we all recruit talent, because it really is important, and you know, it's going to change and shape the future. And then secondly, a second consideration is, I think, committing to working with more sustainable technologies. So digital advertising is quite horrifyingly a major contributor to carbon emissions around the globe. The internet, obviously, including the wonderful world of programmatic and the systems used to support this medium, has, would you believe it, a larger carbon footprint than the airline industry, which is why the UK ad industry last year launched AdNet Zero. And this initiative has been backed by the AA, it's been backed by the IPA, it's been backed by ISBA, of course, the IAB, I think also too, to make Adland carbon neutral by 2030. And you know, I can proudly say that the Telegraph joined the initiative back in 2021 to reduce our own carbon footprint by 2030 as well. So so a long answer there, but yeah, I guess within the themes of investment in people and also a consideration in more sustainable ways that the industry can operate in.
Wonderful. Thank you, Elsa. In our final few minutes, Guillaume, I'll bounce to you for the same question. How can we sort of ensure a sustainable future for programmatic advertising?
Yes, so same as Elsa here, actually, for the second part at least, I totally agree with the diversity as well, but I really understood this word as in a more eco-friendly way, and with a really target to reach AdNet Zero by the end of the decade. So as a tech provider, I think together with the publishers, we have a lot of responsibility in making that happen. So I would say first point would be to help reduce the ad spend waste, and notably by enriching the data, right? We just talked all the possibilities that exist out there to help doing that. To give you an idea, today we estimate that 30 to 40% of the total advertising spend is wasted. So wasted means like users never saw the ad actually that were paid for, and so on. And it's just staggering to me, right? I think like over 50% or 50% of the ads are actually not viewed, which is crazy when you think about it. So ad spend waste, I would say, then fights a lot ad fraud, like pixel stuffing, ad stacking, bot clicks and so on. So I think all of that improves drastically, impact drastically the viewability, and it's like hundreds of millions of dollars are burned every day just because of that. Yes, I would say last but not least, definitely reducing server usage and cost. So our role would be to really constantly look to optimize the demand pool, talking about header bidding, reduce the amount of partners we work with, really down to still generate a lot of profit, right? But really reduce that, and as well help publishers optimize their ad layout. You don't need to run 10 ads on your website. You don't need to call them all at the same time. There are a lot of techniques like lazy loading, etc., that allow you to really reduce those. So I think, yes, it's really in this, what I had in mind, the word sustainable.
Great. Thank you, Guillaume. All right, Arthur, I'm really sorry. I'm going to have to give you a quick 30 seconds on what's going to drive a sustainable future, so we can...
30 seconds. Yeah. I think to maintain the growth and success of programmatic, the most key important aspect that we need to focus on is attracting and upskilling the talent. It's a massive challenge, and given the challenges that we have to face or have to address, we need to focus on that, attracting right talent with the right skills, but also upskilling the current talent of all the changes that are happening, how it's going to affect, and what needs to be done across all the different aspects of our business and industry. So that's a quick answer.
Great. Thank you so much. And you're absolutely right. I think everyone, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and opinions today. There's certainly been lots of synergies across it. main themes, sort of trust, education, testing, third-party cookies, and, you know, importantly, sort of keeping our collaboration and innovation as a collective unit for the industry to ensure we have a sustainable future. Thank you very much. I'll hand back over to you, Nick.
Thank you very much, Harriet,
you,
and thank you to all the panelists. Lots of exciting things for us to be focusing on. Collaboration and cooperation will be key, obviously, as we look to secure a sustainable and an innovative future for programmatic. As without these, we'll not, you know, we will not be able to drive our industry to the new heights. So, well, we're almost at the end of our H1 2022 Virtual Programmatic Day, and what an event it's been. We've had huge numbers tuning in to the event today, which is just incredible. I'd also like to thank our sponsors of the event, so Quantcast, Yieldlove. We'd not be able to put on these events, obviously, without your valuable support. So thank you so much for that. I'd also like to thank all of our panelists and moderators and keynote speakers for giving up their time, sharing their knowledge. I've learned so much today. It's been a really good experience, and so many views on important topics have been discussed and debated. I'm sure many of our attendees will have taken an idea or three away from on how to improve their own businesses. So I'd also like to thank Lauren Wakefield, Marie-Claire Puffett, and Georgia Cook from IAB Europe for putting together and delivering yet another very great and successful VPD. The event recordings are actually going to be available on the IAB Europe website over the next few days, so please keep an eye out for that. And IAB Europe also has obviously tons of other resources related to programmatic, from white papers and guides to one-on-one videos. So do check out the Knowledge Hub on www.iabeurope.eu. The next VPD will be taking place in November later this year. So be sure to keep an eye out for more information. And if you did enjoy the event, well, you're in luck, because IAB Europe has more great events coming up through 2022, including our flagship event. Here we go. Interact 2022, where we're excited to meet everyone in person once more in sunny Madrid. That will be running on the 25th and the 26th of May. Interact is a must-attend event for the digital advertising and marketing industry, with a central theme driving the next digital decade. We will have full coverage of key topics on the agenda, so we look to address and drive the digital advertising ecosystem forward. So from the attention economy, CTV, retail media, through to premium publisher advertising models, sustainability, the latest policy and regulatory developments, and more. We're going to dive deep into the next year of digital advertising. So for more information on confirmed speakers, the agenda, and how to secure your early bird tickets, check out the link in the chat box, although they won't be so early bird because it's only a couple of weeks away. And as mentioned at the beginning of the event, all of our speakers are from IAB Europe member companies. So if you do want to find out more about membership, please contact Lauren, Marie-Claire, or Georgia, whose details have just flashed up on the screen. And finally, thank you to all of you, the attendees, for tuning in. Without your support and interest, we wouldn't have a VPD. So thank you one last time, and yeah, enjoy the rest of your days.